Welcome to NCREG. Hello. Tonight is Deal Analysis 301, which is focused on multifamily. I guess I'll be standing over here because the glare off the windows is pretty incredible right now. Summertime creates all sorts of problems. Next week, we changed the schedule a little bit. So this is a class that James was going to teach 2 weeks from now. He's removed the class that he didn't know what he was going to teach anyway. So that one's gone. Instead, he's going to teach the 2 best investing strategies for our market right now. I'm assuming one of those is lease options. What are you going to teach us next week? You only got a week.
The 2 best investing strategies for our market right now is what I'm teaching.
No, what are they?
I'm trying to keep them secret so that you come to class.
Well, one is lease options.
One is lease options.
So come to the class to find out the other secret nomad. The other secret, not secret anymore. And then the following week, how many of you have used Wes Knackstead as an inspector on a home ever? So Wes is apparently retiring, which is super sad. He's like the best inspector ever. But he's going to come and has agreed to be barraged by James and I with questions and share his fun stories. I know he's got a couple on my properties alone, so come to that. That will be great. You'll get to find out kind of the insider secrets of home inspectors, what they're looking for, and kind of things he's run across. He's done a lot of rental properties. I know James, other clients have used him as well. The following week is July 4th, so there is no class, so please don't show up. Go find yourself some fireworks. And then in July 11th and July 18th, asset protection part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is strategy, part 2 is documents. So if you are interested in how to protect your assets, your rentals, specifically, those are classes you do not want to miss. We do not actually record those classes, and we don't post them other than for your clients, I think, directly. I'm not even sure if you've got it recorded for that.
Yeah, so we do record them, but they are only available to clients.
Yep. So if you miss that class and you're not a client, you cannot access it. And it seems like everyone's always like, oh, hey, can you just explain this to me in 5 minutes after class? No, I cannot, because it's actually a 2-hour explanation.
It's closer to a
from
3-hour.
Like a 4-hour explanation into 2. So there's that. So don't miss those. Especially class 1, I would say, is strategy, which is how to set up your asset protection, what to do, different ways to protect your assets from different points of view. Any questions on schedule? Probably not. So introduce yourself. James is going to start because he's got the mic. Tonight is basically just introduce yourself, and then, hey, if tomorrow you stumbled upon a 24-unit building, would you buy it, assuming it met your criteria? Or is that just obscenely crazy, and if so, why or why not? James, you're up.
I'm James Orr. I have a wide range of real estate experience. Question tonight, would you buy a 24-unit building?
That is the question.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Probably, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would depend because it's not specifically a part of my plan right now. I'm not out there looking for multifamily units. Our plan is a little bit different than that, but
perfect. Yeah. Wherever you want to pass the mic.
My name is Matt McMullen. This is my first class. I'm new to real estate. I will be buying my first house next month. Would I buy a 24-unit building? Probably not right now, because I'd like to learn a little bit more before I would do something like that.
Learning, overrated. Experience. Just kidding.
My name is LaShawna. I have a vast range of real estate, investment, education, and experience. If I had the means, I would be interested in buying a 24-unit building, depending on criteria and location, condition.
Yep, if it met your criteria. So
yes.
Everyone else doesn't have to say, if it met this. If it met your criteria, would you be willing to buy a 24-unit building? The gist of the question is, would you buy a 24-unit building? Not,
yes.
Is it in the right location? Is it, pretty? Is it not pretty?
Yes.
My name is Mary. I've bought several houses for myself around the world and sold them, and now I have one I'm living in, and hopefully in 2 years or less, I'll be leasing it out. Yes, I would buy a 24-unit.
Sweet.
I'm Anna Silva. I'm a real estate investor here in northern Colorado, and I would definitely buy a 24-unit building.
Hi, I'm Corey. My real estate investing experience is I have one rental property and then I'm working on one flip. If I had the opportunity to buy a 24-unit building, according that it meet my criteria, yes, I would.
Nice. Here, let me get Tammy.
I guess I should have paid attention to what James said. I caught the tail end of it, but yeah. So I'm Tammy, or James is my husband. Thanks, Brian, for training. And I think if it made sense at the time, then yes. If James is on board with that, yes, that's my answer.
So what Tammy said is, if I made James buy it, we would buy it.
I'm Denise. I have some buy and hold, single-family homes, townhomes in northern Colorado, 2 lease option deals in Greeley, one of which just exercised their option and closed yesterday.
Nice.
My name's Bob Thalen, and my wife and I have a few rental properties. And would I buy one? Maybe.
I would say yes.
Woohoo!
I'm Nick. I'm nomading, and I would absolutely buy a 24.
Don't
Hey,
give James.
I
the mic
have a
back.
question for Denise. Did you go review the how to exit out of the lease option deal class that we did? I did. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. I was just curious.
Perfect.
I'm Royce, and I am a long-term buy and hold real estate investor. Done some lease options, a couple partnerships. I would definitely buy a 24-unit building.
Nice.
I have not reviewed the lease option exit class.
I'm Curtis. I don't have any investment experience. I might take on a 24-unit building if I could maybe find a partner or 4 or 5 to help me out with.
Hi, my name's Daryl Stolte. Got several buy and holds, and also I do lend money. I would buy a 24-unit building with the right partners.
Didn't expect Daryl to be here tonight.
Hey, my name's Brian. A long time ago, I flipped a couple properties, but I like the buy and hold model a whole lot better. I also insure investment properties, so if you've got questions, see me after class. Happy to talk about that. And if I don't say yes, I've got at least 3 people in the class right now that would whoop my back end. But yeah, I definitely would.
I'm Michelle. This is my husband, Austin. We have 2 rental properties and are buying a 3rd property right now. And if we had the opportunity and it met the right criteria, yeah, I think we would.
That was on recording, right?
Remember that class on June 13th when you said we'd buy this?
My name is Wes File. I'm an attorney and also a realtor. Just for the last year, I've had my real estate license and looking to get into investing. Haven't really started yet. And if I had a chance to buy a 24-unit building, I would definitely do it.
My name's Ben McMullen. I'm a new investor. Don't have anything currently. I do build multifamily properties, and I am looking for a 24-unit building. I found one.
Perfect.
My name is Lance Thompson. I am a licensed general contractor and also own a roofing company and an HVAC company. And I have a commercial property and been in the class quite a few times just learning. So interested in working with these guys.
Got 2 people that can build 24 plexes sitting in the same corner. They're like, I don't want to buy them. I'll just build them. He'll build them. You buy them. Everyone will be happy.
Hi, I'm Sierra. I'm just learning, but I would love to have a 24-unit building.
Awesome.
Jesse's new to this and here learning, and yes, I'd buy a 24-unit building.
Nice. So I think we got way more yes. Did I miss anybody? Did anybody sneak in? I think we got them. I think there are way more yeses in this class. The last time I actually taught this class, it was like a year and a half ago when multifamily were slightly more available, but still not very. And it seems like there were a lot more yeses tonight, so maybe we should build some 24 units. So just to start, I just want to show you some graphs from James's website. It's data he has that I don't think anyone else has in this format. Basically, multifamily kind of prices as they've kind of been from 1997, 1998 through 2018. This is Fort Collins duplexes, right? So the majority of our discussion tonight is going to be 5+ units, which is why we're asking about a 24 unit. But you can kind of see what's happening, right? 2012, and you can kind of see the slope up. And some of them are stretching really high. I don't remember what these were. I think these are the Remington or some crazy high, you know, per unit prices were over $600,000, which is insane. But you can see, you know, we're in the above 200,000 per unit. So, you know, if you happen to buy a fourplex for 600,000, you got a good deal. That's kind of what I see. Greeley looks a little bit different, right? We're not kind of above the $200,000 price point for duplexes, but you can see it nice angling up, right? So prices are going up. If you happen to buy in here, it's an amazing thing for you, right? You know, buying at 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 per unit, that looks really amazing right now. Triplexes, right? Obviously not as many dots up here because there aren't as many triplexes as there are other things. And so this may not be as representative, but you still get the picture. Fort Collins is going up.
Can you go back a slide?
Yep.
So how many people were here for Mary's interview? So remember Mary was buying like a duplex in Evans. And so Greeley's probably the closest kind of numbers-wise. And if you remember correctly, she was buying back here in like, I think 2014 or 2015. So this is sort of where she bought.
70K.
Yeah, so this is sort of like where she bought in that kind of range. And if you remember correctly, she paid $320 or so for her duplex. And so this is, you know, 80 per unit, so it's about 160 for a duplex. So she was actually one of these higher points for her duplex here. You know, it may have actually been, well, it's Evans, so it wouldn't have been in this graph.
Right.
But you can kind of get a gauge that she wasn't buying at the very low of the market, but she did have quite a bit of appreciation the last few years. So I just wanted to point out, so now that we see the graph of it.
Yep. So I'm going to...
Her
Yes.
unit was much newer and it was much nicer condition. It was a really nice duplex. So.
Yeah. But these are typically, you know, in the duplex range, triplex and fourplex. We'll see it when we get to fourplex, right? Buying properties in Greeley for $65,000, $70,000 a unit is typically a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that's built in 1960, 1970 in that time span, right? Kind of in here. So Fort Collins triplex, you get the same kind of graph. Greeley triplexes, right? Again, it's limited data points, which is why we get this craziness going on. But you can still kind of tell that since 2012, we're on our way up, right? Which is the whole point of this graph. So fourplexes, Fort Collins, same basic thing. You know, you're seeing stuff start to peak above $200,000. Obviously, we don't have a full year of data for 2018 yet, but $200,000 per unit. So if you're buying a Fort Collins fourplex, you're paying $800K for it, right? That's kind of where prices are going. And if you think about that, depending on what rents are and how nice it is, if you were to go buy a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo right now that might rent for, say, $1,400, what are you probably paying? Probably more in Fort Collins. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the quality and where and everything else, but it's probably more than 200. But
yeah, and there is a 4-bedroom condo.
Would you like that tee up?
Yeah, there's a 4-bedroom condo for sale in Fort Collins right now, which I'm sure the numbers look really good on. So if you're interested, go look at that in the MLS or talk to me.
And then just Greeley, again, you can see, you know, things went from crazy lows of below 25K per unit, and now we're getting up over 100K per unit. And I will tell you that not very long ago, James and I were having a discussion about, you know, hey, you know, I bought this property in Greeley and it was, you know, 50,000 a unit or 60,000 a unit. And then you see properties that are for sale and it's like 100K per unit and you just go, this can't be possible, right? It's Greeley. There's no way it's going to be 100K per unit, but we're there. We're there in Greeley. It's 100K per unit, which if you think, hey, I can get $1,000 in rent for a unit that I spent 100K on, you're at the 1% rule. So while it's not as great as this, it still may not be bad. So here's what we're here to talk about tonight. Again, there are not lots and lots of dots on this screen, so it's not relatively stable, but you can tell there's definitely an uptick, right? When you see multifamily that's 5+ units hit the market in Fort Collins or Greeley or anywhere in this region, there's always a lot of interest, where I think rewind 5 years, there was not that same level of interest. People are like, oh, I can't get 2, 3, 4 units. Let me go get 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 or 24. So here's the Greeley picture, right? Same thing. I mean, you just kind of have flat and level, and 5 years from now, my guess is you're going to see a steady incline. James is actually going to be James's fault when he makes my class long tonight.
I apologize, but one thing I do want to point out is, historically, if you had bought a property over here in 1997 and you're thinking you're going to get appreciation from holding multifamily, it took a long time for us to kind of get above where those prices were. So if you thought you were buying multifamily 5+ units and getting a strong appreciation there, it didn't happen until recently that we really started to see this take off. So
yeah, and in fairness, you would really have to go back and go, okay, were any of these the same property? Did they sell? Was it appreciating, right? I mean, there's such a small sample size here that it's really tough. And for the majority of landlords, and you'll see a case study later tonight of a property that shows if you're not actively managing your property to be better, right, this would be really easy. Hey, I bought it for this, and 10 years later, it was still worth the same thing, right? So some of that's going to be based on the economy and how well things are doing, but a lot of it can be changed in the 5+ units because you control the value of your property by what kind of income it's bringing in, not how much it costs to actually build the building. And that's really key in the 5+ world. So pros and cons of 5+ multifamily, which I'm just going to call multifamily for the rest of the class. What do you guys think the pros and cons are of this? What are pros of owning more than a 5-unit building? One roof, maybe, right? It might be 10 roofs if you own 100 units. You never know. So fewer roofs per unit in typical. What else?
Repairs.
Vacancy.
Update, you kind of know the square footage of each one. You can kind of shop in ahead of time and just do it as people move up.
Okay. Repairs. What else? Scalability. Cash flow. One loan. That's a pretty big one. You start thinking about it. Hey, I want to go buy 24 units, 24 loans, or 1 loan, right? 1 trip to the bank or 24. So better cash flow, shared maintenance expenses, right? You might have 1 yard that services everyone that's there. Vacancy in 1 unit doesn't mean you get no money, right? Single family home, it's vacant, what's coming in? Nothing, right? Multifamily, you got 24 units, 3 of them are vacant, 21 of them are still producing cash flow for you. So that's pretty important. The tenants may be shorter term. I think we had this last year, like, why is this in the pros column? Maybe that's why.
It can.
Yeah.
It's good. Better turnover. You can raise your rents with the market a little faster.
Yeah. So this could go on both sides per what James just said. One location. If you own 100 single-family homes in Fort Collins and Loveland and you're driving around to check them all out, that sucks, right? Like, it's just you're driving for the whole week, right? Here you're like, hey, these 3 buildings look nice. Yeah, I'm good. You go to one place, right? You can scale your units much faster, right? You make 3 purchases at an 8-plex, a 12-plex, and a 20-plex, right? You've done much, much faster scaling in terms of how many units you're actually going to own. Which one's easier? Can you sell a 50 unit or 50 single family homes easier? Maybe. In today's market, right? I don't know. I mean, it's probably about the same, honestly, just because our market for single family homes is so crazy. So, yes. It's more work for Tammy to sell 50 single family homes for me than it is for me to sell 150. Yeah, that's, you know how easy it is to sign? Click, 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 click. Hey, am I done signing? Oh, nope, not quite. In fact, I'll just give you power of attorney and you can click. Don't even need to send it to me. More control over value, right? This is a big one to me. It's the one I just mentioned. If you're able to increase your rents for your building is worth more. Not, oh, hey, it's a fourplex. I'm going to have an appraiser go out. He's going to tell me how much the building's worth. And he might look at rents, but not really. And I've had some really bad appraisals on duplexes where there's a duplex in Loveland that a couple of years ago, they told me it was worth essentially what I bought it for like 5 years later. And I was like, they discounted my rent by 50%. And I was like, there's been no vacancy. Like all the buildings around me are getting the same rent. So you've got more control, right? And you'll see that in the case study that I'll show you at the end of class. Financing is easier to get, right? How many of you have been through a Fannie Mae loan process where they asked for your firstborn child, right? You're like, I don't have kids. They're like, too bad, get a kid, right? Like tough, you gotta find one. Go adopt, bring him in. But financing is somewhat easier to get, right? Because they're looking at the property more than they are just you. You can't be a terrible borrower, but they're gonna look at the property as well. Loans don't count against Fannie Mae 30-year fixed your 10 slots, right? Which that's awesome too, right? You go buy, 5 commercial buildings, you still buy 10 single-family homes with Fannie Mae. That's pretty awesome. One loan for multiple units, which we covered, and then just economies of scale, right? Your property manager or you are going out to one property, maybe it's one boiler. The boiler works or the boiler doesn't work, you replace the boiler, you're good for heating in your building for hopefully 40 years. Cons. Man, look at that. Well, there's one con. Smaller buyer's market, although today that's not quite as much of a con as it was like a year and a half ago. What are some other cons that you think might be of owning a commercial building? Tenants. Got to sell the whole thing. What do you mean by that? I would just like to sell one unit of this 24-unit building. Who would like to buy it? Yes. Yes. You're going on a nice vacation, apparently. That's what you're thinking about. What are some other cons?
Expenses for roofing is going to be larger for multifamily.
Okay, things might be more expensive, right? Your boiler goes out, it might be $40,000, whereas a furnace, $2,000, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if a tornado blows through one of your 24 units and it destroys all 24, you're like, oh man, I'm glad I have 24 houses spread all around and it only damaged one, right? Very, very true. Huh? Bed bugs, cockroaches. Yeah, those things spread, unfortunately. One location, right, which is the tornado example. You have a geographical disadvantage. If something happens in that location, whether it's weather or that particular market goes down, it'd be like if you bought an entire neighborhood and then suddenly that school district went to just total crap, right? And they're like, everyone's moving out trying to get away, or it became gang infested, right? So you're at a disadvantage because you only have got one location. It's more expensive, right? I mean, one building isn't going to cost you $250,000. It's going to cost you $2.5 million, right? Which is adding a zero, which we'll talk about. Harder to find right now and for the foreseeable future, right? Forever is what it feels like. Financing, right? They're higher rates. It's variable interest rate in many cases, and there's typically a balloon in 5 to 10 years. So it's not, hey, I'm locked in for 30 years. It's, hey, in 10 years, I got to figure out what to do with what I owe, and what happens if a bank can't actually refinance me, right? That's a serious thing. James, what you're saying about balloons?
Balloons are for clowns.
Balloons are for clowns. Risk of loss might be higher, right? Somebody cooks meth in your 24-unit apartment, it's much worse than somebody cooking meth in a single-family home, right? You've just contaminated your entire building. So no fun there. Do you have something you want to add?
No, I mean, it's bad in both cases if someone cooks meth in any of your properties, but it probably is worse in a multifamily if it spreads.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things I want to talk about is, am I overpaying? And the person I'm going to talk about is not in the room, so that's probably good. But he's totally happy, so it doesn't matter. So here's an example that a lot of people run into, right? Hey, here's a property. It's listed at $720K. Cash on cash and the other requirements that you have, they're met for you, right? So let's just all say you guys are like, hey, I want to buy a property. And I'm like, hey, there's this property for $720,000, and it meets your requirements for cash on cash. Do you buy it? Yes. Okay. Stay with me, right? During your due diligence, you find out that the seller bought it for $300,000 2 years ago. Do you buy it? No. James, get out. At least use the mic if you're going to say that. You know. Do you buy it? No. So who said yes and changed their mind to no? Raise your hand. Okay. Why? But why does that matter? That's going to be my question. Is there? Okay, so let's keep going. That's your first thought, right? Is like, oh, he's trying to screw me. He bought $300,000, selling it for $720. Well, you know, I'm going to get ripped off. That's what you think, right? So let's take a look from the seller's viewpoint. He bought it for $300K, probably put a lot of time and money and effort into it, right? Probably a lot of money. If it was for sale for $300,000 and now it's worth $720, he did something right, right? The more money they actually get to put in, the lower their return on investment is. So if he bought it for $300,000 and he put 25% down, right? And then he stuck another $150,000 into it, doesn't look as good cash on cash for him, right? So he looks at it and goes, well, it's worth a lot more. I could either refinance and cash out or I could sell it.
Does everyone understand the idea that cash on cash, why does that? Is it not?
Sure. So in the beginning example, there's basically $75,000 in, right? 25% of 300. No one can read my writing anyway. I'm not sure why I'm writing that. But 75K, if we add another 150K to that, right? Now we're in for 225K. If we were getting, let's just say, $7,500 per month, right? The percentage of that is what? 10%. If we're getting $7,500 per month or per year or whatever on that, what's the percentage now? A lot lower, right? Yeah, like 3.5%, 4%, somewhere in there. So that's the problem. The more money you stick in out of pocket, the lower your cash on cash return is actually going to be percentage-wise. So the more the property appreciates, the same thing happens. This is the class that James teaches about return on equity. So now not only do we have maybe 225 in there, but the property is appreciated by 150,000. So now I've got this huge number. Just keep going with this example since it's on the board, right? What's 7,500 per month or per year or whatever on 375? It's like 2.5% or something, right? That's crazy. So now you're like, hey, this isn't doing nearly as well as what I thought it was going to do. So what are you going to do with it? Seller wants to take his money and get a better return, right? Even though they're probably crushing it dollar-wise, right, per month. But percentage-wise, right, they're not. So buyer's viewpoint. If it's a deal for you today, right, this shouldn't change anything for you. It really shouldn't. You're just going to miss a deal. If you didn't know that piece of information and you bought it and the property does well for you, would you not have bought it knowing someone else bought it for cheaper? Hopefully not, right? Take the emotion out and make that business decision. Obviously, make sure the numbers make sense for you, right? If this is just simply someone, hey, I bought it for $300 and I held it for 2 years, I didn't do anything, and it's really worth $500 and I'm charging $720 because the market's amazing, that's a different story. So make sure it makes sense for you. And if you want the $300K purchase price, go look for them, right? They're hard to find right now. And this is a real example. So it does happen, right? And I've actually, so this happens to be a property that I sold, but I've also been on the flip side of this where my buyer or my seller basically bought it for, I don't even know what it was, $250 or $275, and I paid basically $720. So it doesn't matter. And that property is, if I could buy 20 more of them, I totally would, all day long at that same price, right? Because it's done really, really well. You have something you want to add?
Yeah, just when you're on the sell side of that, you think to yourself, you know, I have all this equity in here. Could I take that money and get a better return, improve my cash flow by buying 3 more investments with that same amount of money? And that's really the thought process. It's not like you're in a bad position, it's just you could be in a better position.
Yeah, so overall, when you step back, I think it's a win-win situation, right? The seller gets to take his money and go get a higher cash-on-cash percentage return, and the buyer gets a property that meets their criteria that is going to do well for them in the future. So don't let this dissuade you from buying properties when you go back, oh, 3 years ago you bought, oh my God, half price. Like, it doesn't matter. So, terms and definitions. This is all in the spreadsheet now, which you don't have to pull the spreadsheet up. But if you hover over anything in the spreadsheet, this is the same deal analysis spreadsheet that you guys have all had access to for years now. It's all in there. I'm just going to briefly cover a couple things. I'm going to go really fast because otherwise it'll be 10 o'clock and James will be unhappy that we're still here. He didn't bring snacks for us. So gross potential income, right? This is the maximum income you could earn per year. So if rent is $1,000 a month and there's 1 unit, what is your gross potential income? Perfect. Gross operating income, right? This is what you actually get after vacancy. So there you go. Operating expense, cost to run the property, minus debt service, right? We don't include debt service in that. Why is that? Silence.
You can calculate the cap rate, which can be independent of financing.
Yes. Net operating income is simply gross operating income. So what we're actually going to get minus our operating expenses, right? So net operating income is important because it tells you what you can afford to pay for your loan. It says, hey, if you've got $1,000 a month left over and you're going to go get a loan that costs you $800 a month, you're going to make $200 a month in profit, right? If your loan costs you $1,200, it's too much, right? You're going to be feeding the property $200 a month. Debt service, obviously, this is your mortgage payment. Nothing new there. Cash flow, right? This is your net operating income minus your debt service, which is what we just said, right? That's your profit. Very, very simple. Cash on cash is your cash flow. So what's your profit divided by whatever your total investment in the property was, right? That's what we see here, right? If we put $375 in and we're getting $7,500 out, that would be our cash on cash return, this divided by this in percentage form. Any questions on those? Perfect. These are all in the spreadsheet. You can hover over it anytime. Return on investment, which we refer to as ROI, we take this into account as all profit, right? Which is, in the spreadsheet, it doesn't actually include all 4 aspects, right? It just includes appreciation, loan pay down, and cash flow. There's also depreciation, depends on your tax bracket. Maybe someday I will add that in further than it's added in. And then debt service, I'm not even going to cover, I guess I'll cover this one. Debt service coverage ratio, this is what banks care about. So the easy way to think about this is the bank wants you to be able to support the property beyond just what they kind of see. So they're going to basically come to you and say, hey, I want to see your debt service coverage ratio at a 1.25 or a 1.33, meaning that what's coming in is actually paying for more than the expenses on the property, right? Why is that? Because shit happens. They want to make sure that you're actually going to be able to cover that. And that's your NOI divided by your debt service. And then cap rate is simply your NOI divided by the purchase price. And we don't use cap rate a lot here because if you're buying a property for cash, this is basically the same as your cash on cash return. But Royce, James. Oh, I thought James wanted it. I was like, wow, that's just awesome. James is 2 feet away from the mic and he's yelling for the microphone.
Do you have any idea on, like, with the debt service coverage ratio, like what specific type of numbers they're looking for?
1.25 to
Is
1.33.
specifically with- Okay, I wasn't
Yep.
sure if that was just an example. Or if
Yep. No, that's the actual reality of most banks. So what happens, though, as you get more and more loans, like at First Bank as an example, it doesn't make a lot of sense. As you get more and more loans and more properties, their debt service coverage ratio for you actually goes up. And I think it peaks at 1.6 is what it used to be. And so at that point, it's crazy, right? Because you're like, hey, can you give me another loan? And they're like, no, you're at 1.4. And you're like, that's fantastic. Like, and no one else has this in their portfolio. And they're like, yeah, we need 1.6, which is really tough, right? Or you need extra income coming from somewhere else. There's other ways to overcome it, but that's what they're looking for. And so it gets tougher and tougher. But that's portfolio loans. If you're just dealing with Fannie Mae, it's usually in the 1.25 to 1.33.
Cool.
Yep. Another way to think about that is if you buy a property, the rent that's coming in, they're only going to count 75% of that towards your income, right? That's the inverse of the 1.25 to 1.33 is 75%. So those are the basic terms. Just some common commercial loan terms. If you guys are familiar with commercial loans, then this will be really easy. Typically, it's 25 to 30% down. On occasion, you can get 20%, but it's probably going to need to be a Class A property. Class A property is like newer, great location, and your cash on cash is probably very, very, very low. There were 3 8-plexes that James and I looked at. I don't know, when was this? Like 3, 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago. And they're brand new, and you run the numbers, and it's like 1% cash on cash return. And this is 4 years ago. So in today's market, it would probably look like it was negative. Yep. That's why we golf at that golf course, so that James can go, remember when you didn't buy those? And I go, yep. Sure do. So in that case, you might get 20%. Normally, it's 3 to 10 years fixed, right? 3 years is really, really short. 10 years starts to seem like a long time until you put a 10-year loan on something, and then 4 years go by, and you're like, man, in 4 more years, I'm going to have to start thinking about how to refinance this. It goes much faster than I think you think. Rate is higher the longer it's fixed, right? Banks want their money. So 3-year, oh, yeah, sure, we can give that to you for 4.5. 10-year, yeah, it's 5.5, right? So you're playing the, do I want more cash flow up front, and then I have to figure out refinance or have a variable rate? That's all going on. So there's an example. Those were actual rates, not this year. They're a little higher than that now. So is it worth it to actually fix your rate longer, right? And sit down. James, stop taking pictures.
You'll see that in the newsletter.
So in my opinion, it typically is worth it, especially on something you're planning to hold for a long period of time, right? I'd much rather know it's fixed for 7 to 10 years than have to think about, gosh, 3 years from now, I'm going to refinance it. Adjustable rate after the original fixed period. So, and in fact, some commercial loans will actually let you do interest only for a year or two, and then principal and interest kick in. So your cash flow looks really great for 2 years, which they're like, yeah, it looks great. And then principal kicks in and it doesn't look nearly as good. So all these things are things to take into account. 20 to 30-year amortization. So if you've ever looked at a single family home, most of those loans are 30-year amortization from Fannie Mae. Now, go plug 20 in the spreadsheet and see what it does to your payment, right? It's not chump change that it's moving it. So be aware. Most are going to be in the 20 to 25-year range. So you're paying more because it's amortized over a shorter period of time. Again, the banks are looking for security on larger properties. Balloons, right? They're still for clowns, like James likes to say. I apparently like clowns, I guess. I don't know. But there is a lot of risk here, right? And it's something that you don't hear a lot about is if you're a large commercial investor, right, and you've got tons of properties and they're all coming due at the same time and it happens to be a down market, how do you refinance them? And if you can't refinance them, you owe the bank the balloon amount. So do you sell them? You're in a down market. Are you going to lose money? It's like a double-edged sword. So be careful and watch the balloons closely.
Let me comment on that for a second. So the challenge is real estate goes in cycles, right? And the cycles can be a little bit longer than you might think. They might be 14-year cycles or 7-year cycles or wherever you choose to believe. And so you could be buying commercial properties in a really strong rising market, but realize that the balloons are sometimes 10, 15, 20 years out, and they may just happen to be at during a market decline. They could be at the end of a 7-year decline. It could go up for 14 years and then be going down for 7 more years, so that when your 20-year balloon hits, it could be at the very bottom, the darkest time of a commercial market. And some lenders may not have appetites to do refinances at the time, and you may not want to sell when your property has been declining in value for 6 years and rents are way down. So it's really a kind of a scary thing for the commercial loans in particular for you to think about. So really plan for that accordingly.
James has apparently been holding out on the 20-year balloon source as well. Not sure what lender you're using for that, but yeah. So they usually have an origination fee. You can usually get away from Fannie Mae lenders having an origination fee. You can pay one if you want, but most don't have them. But in commercial land, a half a point to a point, and now you're talking about a point on a loan that might be $2 million, right? So it's not chump change there either. There's also a prepayment penalty on the majority of the commercial loans. So there's 2 options. There's either kind of a step down where if it's a 10-year loan, it's 5%, 5%, 4%, 4%, 3%, 3%, 2, 2, 1, 1. Or the other option, which the formula for is like a page long, and I'm not going to present it nor go through it here. But the problem with the other one is you don't really know what it is until you decide, hey, I want to have the loan paid off, and then they tell you, well, it's going to be this much at closing. So that one's a little scary. The formula is crazy. I think I sent it to James, and we just kind of looked at it and went, yeah, that's fun. So just to get into the spreadsheet, how many of you have not seen this spreadsheet that's on James's website that I made? So we'll get into the spreadsheet, but I'm just going to run through this very quickly. All the orange cells are cells that you fill in, although they look, I guess they look more orange straight on. Yeah, peach, whatever this color is, clown, blood red, I'm not sure. You know, and then blue are automatically calculated for you. And you can't mess it up because the spreadsheet won't let you. But basically, you're going to plug in purchase price. You're going to plug in, hey, am I getting any concessions? You're going to plug in down payment. You're going to plug in what your closing costs are. You're going to plug in your interest rate, the loan length, and that's really about it, right? So that's the first thing you're going to plug in, and you'll see this in the spreadsheet in a minute. And then there's an income section. You're going to plug in what your monthly rent is. If you've got any other income, such as laundry income, you plug it in there. And that's really all you need to plug in on the income side. The expenses side, kind of the obvious things, right? Taxes, insurance, HOA, utilities, management, maintenance, the rest of the stuff that you would normally expect to plug in. So with that, we're going to take a deal that I haven't actually run the numbers for, and we're going to do it as a class. And the deal is actually on the market now. It's actually taking backup offers. So if you like what you see and it's amazing at the end, maybe go put a backup offer in. But here it is. And so I've not done any work on this property other than putting it into my spreadsheet. The one after this I've done some work on, and then there's a case study. So the goal is class participation for looking at this, commenting on it, saying, hey, is this something you would buy? So this is in Greeley. Purchase price is about $600,000. What do you notice about the property? I'm going to show you pictures. It's old. So it was built in 1927. I know a lot of you can't see this. It's about 6,022 total square feet. And this says, this is a good selling point, hasn't been for sale in 20 plus years. Maybe that also means hasn't been taken care of in 20 plus years. I don't know. Amazing UNC rental for sale. 6 units, all fully rented. Perfect. Shared laundry with coin washer and dryer. So that's what we know. So let's look at some other pictures. Here's the inside. So what do you guys notice? You guys tell me, because otherwise I'll just tell you what I notice. There is a cat. Popcorn ceilings. What else do you notice about these first pictures? Hardwood floors. That's a plus. Fireplace. Plus or minus, depending on how you think about it. Right? Paint. How about the windows? Can't tell, but they look nice from here, right? Right? This is the information we get when we go to analyze a deal. We're not at the property, so it's what's your blink, right? Next set of pictures. Kitchen and a bathroom. What do you guys think? Wallpaper's awesome, right? It'll come back someday. Yeah, well. Yes. So, yes, there's turn dials. It's not green. So, the ceiling in the kitchen probably is asbestos. Almost guaranteed. It's the tiles, right? But somebody said it needs updating. For the type of unit that's here for college kids, that's not so bad. This is normal, realistic, 2-bedroom, 1-bath type rental stuff. How about the bathroom? The bathroom actually looks nice, except for maybe what appears to either be roll vinyl or if it's roll vinyl, it's fine. If it's the stick down crappy 1x1 tiles, man, somebody should be shot for installing those. I hate those things. So bedrooms. Nice floors. This is clearly upstairs. Yep, so can't tell if this is a leak or whatever, and I mean they got some like kind of crown molding. The smallest crown molding you've ever seen. Yeah, it's built in 1927, so it probably is plaster, right? Next picture. You got a bird cage light fixture. So if you have a bird, you're in luck. You should buy this. Yeah. I'm not sure why they took them from the outside and put them on the inside. Thought, hey, decoration. And then you got another bedroom with hardwood floors. This looks to be the 1-inch kind of strips of hardwood, which might be original, which might mean it's great, and it might mean it's been sanded down and refinished so many times that you can't do that anymore and you need to replace it. Another kitchen, another dining room.
Old cabinets.
Yep, cabinets are wonky, but if they work and they're just a little wonky for college students, not so bad. This floor looks super nice. Here? So it's either a pantry or it's a staircase to a different unit that they probably closed off. Oh, the door is kind of open at the bottom. Yeah, it's where they hide the bodies. So other side of the unit, hardwood floors, nice fireplace. It looks nice. The windows look decent. Old door for sure. Kitchen kind of the same. The other side of the bathroom, and that's a really tight squeeze, right? But what are they doing here, right? Why is this such a tight squeeze? Because they put a dishwasher that moves around in the kitchen, right? You can take the dishwasher out and that kind of stinks, but it is a small kitchen. Again, when you look at the front of the building, what did you see? What did it look like, though? How many units does it appear to be? It looks like it might have been a really crazy house or a duplex, right? 2 kind of front porches. So it's 6 units now, which means this kitchen is small for a reason. James and I had a property under contract where there were 9 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and 3 kitchens, and the main floor was amazing. It was really pretty. The downstairs was like a dungeon, and the upstairs was just funny because that roof that you see that's like this in that one unit, that was the kitchen. So imagine a roof about right here, and this is the stove. It was actually lower coming off there, and the stove is right here. So me standing over the stove, my head would have actually been on the ceiling trying to cook, which was pretty crazy. And then they've got this weird, nice-looking deck that appears to be on top of the building from the picture angle. So that's a selling point for college kids, and it's a liability when they jump off. So this is beer pong right off the top of the building. Not good. So this is where it's located. If you're familiar with Greeley, UNC is basically right here. Highway 85 is right here. And most people will say, the further you get kind of towards 85 up here, the more gang activity there is. Whether or not that's true is for you to determine. But UNC, around UNC, is UNC going anywhere? No. Is UNC like a rundown, dilapidated college? No, it's super nice, right? They have some really amazing brick buildings that are super pretty. So this is very close to the northern side of UNC, right? So that's where it's at. So this is the information in the listing, right? You've got 6 units. One's a 3-bed, 1-bath. One's a 1-1, one's a 1-1, another 2-1, a 2-1, and a 1-1. And here's your rent, right? $1,300 for the 3-1 seems in line with what I know about Greeley. $550 or $600 and $650 for the 1-1s. My guess is that these 2 are downstairs, right, or basement units, and this one isn't. And then this is odd. This one says it's not a basement, which is what I didn't even notice that until just now. I'm cheating. I didn't even know I was cheating, right? This was a 2-1 that's not in the basement for $900, and then the one that's in the basement's $500, right? Because I was just going to be like, why is that so different? So let's see what they have to say. Listing comments we already talked about. Broker remarks, blah, part of a 1031 exchange. 5 units rented until October 2018. What are you thinking? And 1 unit until May 12th of 2019. That must be graduation. Somebody's like, I'm not renting it past graduation, right? Building is a lawful, non-conforming dwelling. What does that mean? Yeah, it basically means it was a house turned into a 6-unit building. There was some other documentation that I didn't bother to put in here because I'm going to ignore this fact for the rest of the presentation that basically shows it is indeed a 6-unit building and it can be used that way lawfully. But there were some crazy Did you look at that document? Did you look at that document? It actually looks like someone did graffiti in pencil on the document. It's really odd. You should totally go look. I was like, what does this say? It's like someone big, bulky letters on the document. I was like, is this for real? So rent breakdown, we kind of already covered that. The extra thing to note here is that they're basically paying gas, and some of them are paying gas and electric, right? So they are starting to bill back the utilities. Expenses, potential rental income, $54,000. You take this, you add it up, you get $4,500, you multiply by 12, you get $54,000. Vacancy rate of 3%. Is that legit? Pretty much in Greeley. And if you're managing appropriately, that should be easy. So effective rental income, or as we like to call it, thank you, gross operating income, right? Other income, they have none, which is odd because they said they have a coin-op laundry. So there probably is some other income. It may well be broken. But I think you'll see in a minute, maybe it's the other property that had it. Yeah, so property taxes, 2051, hasn't been sold for 20 years. Probably going to go up, right? Tax year 2017, building insurance, $3,288. Higher or lower as we take it over. Utilities, none, right? Common area maintenance, $13,818. Total operating expenses, $11,214, which is kind of weird because I don't know that common area maintenance probably costs $13,818. This is probably all their maintenance, which to me should be included in this. And then they're ignoring this number completely, and they're just subtracting like these, and they get this, right? So the stuff that you see in listings, just assume it's wrong, right? And go and like figure out what you think it's going to be for yourself. So what are your first thoughts on the sixplex based on that information? So $4,500 a month is the current rent, and it's a $600,000 purchase price. How many of you guys think, hey, that's interesting, I might want to buy that? 1, 2. How many definitely don't want to buy it? Why don't you, the 3 back here, why don't you want to buy it? It's old in the student housing? Ditto? They're way wonky. Perfect. So, basically, yeah, maybe, right? We don't know until we go look, right? But, the owner hasn't been there, or hasn't, sold it in 20 years. Maybe they haven't been there in 20 years. So, maybe. Yeah. So, it's important to note, like when you're going through this is the analysis process I go through, right? I'm looking at the pictures, I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm like, hey, is this interesting enough for me to plug into the spreadsheet, which James is going to have to do for us here in a second. If you like it, just a comment, don't wait to go see it, right? If you run the analysis, you're like, hey, this looks close, call James, go see the property, right? So let's do the analysis together in the spreadsheet. James, spreadsheet us up. So sixplex, what's our purchase price? Down 1. Yep. So in today's market, what do we think might happen? In order for us to actually get the property under contract, what's likely to happen? Okay. So what's a reasonable, like, hey, we're just going to go make a strong offer. What's a reasonable strong offer? I got a heckler in the back. So, I don't know. 610. So maybe, how much do we think closing costs are going to be? Roughly. Huh? Not including, it doesn't include real estate commissions. That's coming out of the seller side. I don't know. 10K? So on a 600,000 purchase price, 10K? So I'd say more like 6. Yeah, so maybe we roll our $6,000 in and we offer 10K above, so maybe 616. That might be a reasonable offer. Seller concessions would then be 6,000, like we just talked about. How much are we having to put down, percentage-wise?
20 to 30%.
Yeah, so what's typical? What's like kind of the minimum bar? 25, so let's go with that. Seems reasonable. First Bank should be able to do that. Closing costs, we said we're 6,000. We're just covering our closing costs with the seller concessions. Rent ready costs we're going to leave blank for now, I think, because we don't know, right? Huh? It looked decent enough to continue renting, and you can go adjust based on that. And if you run your numbers and you're like, hey, it works for me, and then you go out and have an inspection done and you see all the units and you're like, well, I have $40,000, come back, plug in $40,000 and alter your offer, right? So down here, interest rate, commercial interest rate on a loan. What do you guys think that's approximately at right now? You think it's that high? Yeah, so I thought it was 5.5. James said 5.625. We got a high end of 6.25. I don't know, let's plug 5.75 in. Right? And this is going to vary depending on lots of things, right? Your relationship with the bank, for one, how much money you have with them, et cetera, et cetera. And first loan length is not going to be interest only. It's going to be 30. 30. You can mouse over, go up twice, and then put 30 in. There you go. So that basically gives us all of our kind of purchase information. Was that hard to plug in?
Okay, on the low end.
On the low end of?
Everything. I mean, you kind of figured out the low end percentage-wise, cost.
Well, this is a reasonable assumption, 25%. I don't know what the commercial rate is. You could call a lender in 15 minutes and get that. For commercial? Yeah, it's probably higher than that. Depends on what they're considering commercial. Yeah, they're lying. Yeah, so not very difficult to plug in. You can always come back and change it. The goal here is we're trying to get a rough picture of, is this worth calling James and going to see? We looked at the pictures. We said, hey, that looks decent. Hey, it might make money. Let's find out how much. What's the current monthly rent? $4,500. Very good. If it has coin-op laundry, it's $54,000 a year, which is $4,500 a month. So a 6-unit building, if laundry is working, what do you think you're going to bring in? Maybe 50 a month. Total? Yeah, total. Yep. And you'd probably, depending on the unit and how many people use the laundry, there are some units I own where you're like, wow, that's great. And there are other units where like no one uses it. So.
Take it home to mom.
Yep, and that's net. So in a lot of cases for multifamily, you're having someone else place the washer and dryer and you're splitting the profits with them, but they will handle anything that goes wrong with the washer and dryer. So much better than you, one service call to your property manager to fix your washer, and all profits are gone for the year anyway. So you'd much rather have them do it. Taxes, what do we think taxes are? Oh, sorry. Vacancy, what do we talk about vacancy being? 3%, so plug 3 in. Taxes, what do we think taxes are going to be? You're going to have to flip back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, it's 2000 something. So taxes are 2051 and insurance was 3288 according to them. Do we think those numbers are accurate? What do we think we should do with taxes? How much? James, how much do you think we should raise it?
You can actually go look at mill levy and do the calculation.
Right.
Or we could just use an estimate, and I'd say estimate's probably about 0.65, 0.7% of the purchase price.
Perfect. So that sounds like a lot like 42 or 4,300 bucks, right? For taxes. Are you doing insurance? Was your answer for insurance or taxes?
Yeah, I was just going to multiply. But
Just 4,200. I just took 0.7 times 600,000. Got 4,200. Yeah. How about insurance? What do you guys think is reasonable for a sixplex for insurance? To what? Okay. So 4,500. HOA, nope. Utilities, what are we going to do with utilities? We're going to bill them back, right? We may end up paying for them for a little while, but after October, because they all of them end in October except one, we're billing all the utilities back.
there may be like a common light, like the light over the...
I'm billing it back.
Even the common light?
Yes. They're using the light, not me. They want a seat to get in their car, you gotta pay for that light. Just kidding. Having said that, I've also installed new lights on the back of a building because people were like, it's too dark. So you end up doing that. So I'm going to leave utilities, for me, in this case, blank because I know I'm going to bill all of it back at some point, hopefully sooner than later. Maintenance. What do we think a good percentage for maintenance is on this building? 15%. How much? 15, 15. 15 seems reasonable. Lots of people nodding their head. It is built in 1927. So 15 may or may not be enough, right? You may get in there and you may need to change that. There may be some CapEx stuff you need to come back and plug in, but we'll call it 15 for now. James.
Are you doing any common area stuff like lawn care or landscaping, snow removal, things and other expenses?
It all goes in maintenance for me. Yep. So that maintenance is including somebody to come shovel the walks because the tenants aren't going to do it because it's a 6-unit building. Whose responsibility really is it? Mowing the yard, same thing. So that's all included in maintenance. Management, what's a typical number for management, for property management? 10%. Let's plug 10 in. Perfect. So that's literally all we needed to do, and now you can scroll down some, James, and maybe zoom in. Right about there. That's all right. Sure. Now go up, yeah. Up, 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 up. So we can see our cash flow, right? Here's our net operating income. Here's your monthly cash flow. What does it say? Minus 111 bucks, right? So negative 0.86%. So how many of you want to go out and rush out and buy this property? How many of you would go see the property? Why would you go see it? Potential. Can the rent actually be moved up, right? We took their word on rent. $4,500, that's what they're getting. Most landlords are vastly under-renting their properties, right, if they're not paying attention. Even property managers. So maybe our numbers are wrong as well for insurance and taxes, which won't make that much of a difference. But if our rent number is really, you know, $5,200, maybe scroll up and plug in that. Right? Or $5,100. You get an extra $100 per unit. You have a mouse, right? I mean, you can do that, but I typically, like in a building like this, I wouldn't do that, right? They're going to come and do that. So it's their utility, their bill. That way it's not on me. But those are definitely in James's class where he teaches, you know, how to basically increase your rent. That's definitely one of the ways. I mean, you can do all sorts of extra things. So just by simply moving the rent $100 per unit, which might be $150 for the 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and $50 for the downstairs 1-bedroom, 1-bath, right? Now where are we at? Positive 326 with cash on cash at 2.54%. Now you just need to find out how much extra maintenance is there. Is it worth going and looking at? If you're interested in that type of a building and you're not scared of it being old, it's close to UNC, it may not be a bad deal. Yeah. And? Still does the same calculations.
I was looking at the depreciation.
Oh, yep. So scroll down a little bit for me, overall analysis. So we're assuming 3% appreciation on sale price, right? Again, you can control that by how much rent you're getting. So this is just showing that. And then down here, overall return. So without CapEx or with CapEx, they're going to be the same because we didn't plug CapEx numbers in. You're basically looking in the range, right? You'll see it's dropping for your ROI in the compound, right, which is normal. That's like, hey, if I put $100 in the bank and I look at the compound rate, your rate is going to drop over time because you need to make more and more, where annualized ROI is simply simple interest. I put $100 in the bank and I earn 10%. That means I got $10 every single year. That's simple interest. So annualized ROI, it gets up into the 30% in, I don't know what year that is anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20. So year 20. Yep. But you're in the 18 to 20 range kind of right away for overall return. So anyone interested, if this was on the market and not just taking backups, how many of you people would go and actually take a look at that? it's interesting, right? Especially in today's market where finding a property that has any cash flow fully managed is difficult. So that's what you kind of need to look for. Any other thoughts or questions on the sixplex? Yeah, so that's really, if I'm interested after I plug these numbers in and I go and I look at Craigslist and I say, hey, what are other rents? Call my property manager, hey, what do you think this rent's for? And they tell me, yeah, $5,100 or $5,500. I'm calling James and I'm like, hey, let's go look. And I'm going to go see, how is the roof? How is this? How is that? And then I'm going to come back and go, hey, CapEx, I'm going to need a new boiler in 5 years. And I'm going to start plugging that in and see, does this still make sense? There is a CapEx field. It's like right here. Yep. And there's a CapEx. For those of you who don't know the spreadsheet, like right here, there's a field where you can basically plug in, I think my roof will last 20 years and it costs $30,000. I think my water heater will last this long and it costs this much. And it will basically sum total all of your kind of CapEx needs, which James was just showing you before he went back. Yeah?
What are your thoughts on it?
So I had a property like this under contract 5 years ago or something, and I backed out because it needed about $100K of work. In hindsight, had I kept it, I'd probably be crushing it because the numbers looked amazing on it, right? Way, way better than this. This type of property, right, is not, I typically don't do student stuff. So this for me is just like, I'd rather focus on something else. But the age of the property for me is definitely a deterrent. The student part is definitely a deterrent. You've got 1-year leases, turnovers, a lot of subleases for the summer season. That just adds up to a lot of turnover work. So, yep, yeah, all the turnover work and all the maintenance that gets done. So for me, this is I wouldn't even do the analysis on this. I would look at the first one, I go, oh, it's $4,500 on $600,000, and I would pass, right, in my personal criteria. So, you want to go back to the spreadsheet or to the PowerPoint? Go back to where we are. It's like Back to the Future. So we covered this. So some other things to consider, right? If the numbers meet your cash flow, should you buy it? No. Heckler. Right, not always, right? I mean, that's the answer. That's the question you asked me was, hey, what do you think? Would you buy it? Right? Long-term return matters too, right? There's times when you're going to see cash flow is super awesome, but you look at the long-term return and it's like not so super awesome, right? And there are areas and different markets where you've got no appreciation or very little, and that is where this tends to happen, right? We teach a class on, I forget what it's called. It's like why you shouldn't buy $30,000 houses in certain markets that have no appreciation. What is the name of that class?
I think it's
How CapEx kills you.
CapEx is silent killer.
CapEx is silent killer, yes. And that's exactly what this is, right? Over time, cash flow looks amazing, but everything else isn't adding up. And so in the end, you end up with something that doesn't make sense. And I put this in here for James. How many of you here when we talked about the property in Grover? It was like an 11-unit building in a town of 100 people, right? And James really wanted somebody to have to go show that property to. It's probably still for sale, but there was a line under here that says, call James, he really wants to show it, but I took that out. So yeah, Lance.
I just want to say like the non-conforming part of it. So I ran into that before in Greeley, and sometimes it's parking or things like that the city doesn't accommodate, so you got to reapply for all that stuff.
Yeah, this happened to be that like there was due to no fault of the property owner, the property had fallen out of the 1 year, like forever in time. If there's a 1 year period that's consistent where the property is not used as the non-conforming use, then it loses that grandfathered clause. And so apparently that had happened, and then they applied and said it was out of our control. We couldn't have prevented it. I don't know why. And they basically said, yes, you're correct. It was out of your control. We re-grant you your grandfathered clause. So if you ever had a year with this property where you no longer use it as a 6 unit, that clause is gone and it goes back to being a duplex probably. So there's risk there.
Yeah, one of the challenges with coming to a class, and definitely with some strong personalities in the room, is that you have a tendency to adopt the deal selection criteria of some people they're very outspoken. And I will tell you, just having seen a lot of investors over the years, different investors have different criteria, and that some people would find this as a exceptionally good deal for them.
No doubt.
and that other ones would say, I wouldn't even go look at it. I'd see what it was and just not run numbers.
There's a reason it's under contract.
Yes.
Someone finds this interesting, which is totally okay. I'm not a student housing kind of guy. Location matters. What's around the property? Anytime you go see a property, go walk around it, especially multifamily. Walk all sides of it. Is this something you're going to want in your portfolio 10 years from now? Or is this just like, oh, it's got great cash flow, but man, I don't want to own that in like 10 or 20 years. Think about those things. And if not, what's your exit strategy for that? What is the conversion or possible highest and best use? I am very terrible at thinking about this. I have a friend who is very good at thinking about this. And it's like, should you tear this building down and build a 12-plex that's brand new, right? Or should you put a bowling alley here, right? I mean, things like that where I just don't think that way, and it's not in my wheelhouse. Like, what is the best use of that property? Or could you have business in it, right? Could you turn that main level into 2 businesses where you're getting $2,500 or $3,500 in rent for each side from a business each month, right? Depends on where it's at. All right, James, you're probably back over here. Second deal, and we're going to fly through this one. 16 units in Longmont, right? So that first one is an introductory, hey, $600,000, everybody can kind of go, yeah, house costs $300,000. I can see that being 2 houses. If I was buying a house and a friend that was an investor was buying a house, we could just go buy that 6-plex instead. That makes sense. Fantastic. Here's 16 units for $2.75 million, right? Now it's suddenly most people go, whoa, that's too much, right? However, that's what it's going to probably take to get into something of that caliber in our area. So here's a 16-unit building built in 1971. What do you notice? All brick. Mostly all brick. Got some paint issues, right? I'm just going to fly through these photos, right? I can't tell if that's a rainbow or a sprinkler. It looks like a rainbow, but clearly has some parking. We have the same very narrow entrance to kitchens. This is very common in older units that they've put newer sized appliances in. A lot of these apartments were built to have like those fridges that are like this tall and this wide. That's what they were built for. And people are like, I want a full-size fridge. And they're like, great, good luck walking in your kitchen. Very typical. Flooring, popcorn, yeah. You notice popcorn as a deterrent to people that are renting, or do you notice popcorn because you don't like popcorn in your own house?
I think other people don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has ever said, oh, there's a popcorn ceiling, I'm not going to rent.
Right.
I don't think that's ever happened to me showing properties that are renting. A lot of people that want to live in a house, they're like, oh, this has popcorn ceiling. It's a deterrent to buying your own personal property, but it's not that.
With flipping, it's a big thing.
But you're selling to an owner-occupant, right? You're not renting. So if you're renting, but then we look at the bathroom, it looks great. Tiled shower, new floor. Clearly there was a water leak they had to fix. Who knows, right? Kitchen looks really nice, except for this pink-looking fridge. I think that's just the picture, right? And then these are my favorite pictures of bedrooms ever. Hey, here's a corner with a window, some floor, some ceiling. Shows you nothing. Does it have a closet? I don't know. See, it still looks pink or orange or whatever color that is. I think this is the same bathroom, so they might have done the bathrooms, several of them, all the same, right, at the same time. Yes. Yep. So here's another kitchen, right? Looks like roll vinyl. It's got a dishwasher, which is fantastic. Looks in decent shape. This is an indication of when it was built, that light. That kind of light over the sink, right? You got some really funky like tile in the background, but again, roll vinyl that looks like it's either dirty or needs to probably be replaced if it's damaged. This kitchen's looking a little worse for the wear. So you can see the spectrum, right? Really nice, really newly done kitchen and really crappy, needs to be redone kitchen. That is normal. You're gonna find, walking through any size units like this, 16, 24, some are gonna look like this and some are gonna look amazing. And the one they're gonna put pictures up of is not usually this one. So kudos to this listing agent for actually showing like both sides, unless there's one that's just like totally wrecked that they're not showing, right? And this is kind of in between, right? I can't actually tell what that is. It looks like it's tile with the widest grout line you've ever seen. But another bathroom looks decent. Another kitchen, clearly cabinets have been replaced. The dishwasher is brand new. It has a plastic peel that's gonna come off. Jesus. No, but that is. So you can see this floor, which actually, oddly enough, looks like a cement floor. So who knows what's going on there. They may have pulled the vinyl up and not replaced it. But the bathrooms don't look too terrible, although you can see the tape line for something that's going on, drywall issue, right? You can kind of see patches here that have been patched. So you can get a lot from the pictures. Another new kitchen, I assume. Another kind of very old kitchen. You see the drawers all starting to tilt up. It's a sign that your cabinets need to be replaced probably sooner than later. What's that?
Newly painted, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, right? So for a 16 unit that's going to rent, there I think is, I don't know if it's a green toilet. So this apartment is primarily rented to men. Or they've all just been cleaned. I don't know. You'd have thought the photographer would have asked this guy to move. Right? Like, this guy got lucky, and I think he's wearing 2 hats. Like, it's weird. But he's got this, like, really red kitchen, which doesn't look bad. It's not like something you're going to install. But you compare it to this, you can see the night and day, tile backsplash all the way to the ceiling, right? Somebody decided, hey, let's go all out on that one. And really nice, like, tile. Yeah. All right, so this is where it is. This is in Longmont. Oddly enough, I drove by this unit the other day and went, I'd really like to own something on this street. No joke. Was totally joking, and then pulled up units that were available, and this came up, and I was like, oh, guess I missed it. So this is where it is. This is Hover Street. This is Main Street. If you guys know Longmont, this area is actually fine. It's a street with like 4 or 5 multifamily buildings that are larger on each side, and then it becomes single-family homes. So decent neighborhood. Here's what it says: 16 2 beds and 1 bath. They're about 770 square foot each. Rent average is $970. Listing comments: rarely available large multi-unit in West Longmont. Very low vacancy in the 3% range. Approximately half of the unit kitchens and baths have been updated. That's fantastic, right? Hey, there's 8 you don't have to do. Coin op, washer, dryer, individual unit gas and electric meters paid by tenant. That's awesome. Electric also includes trash. Again, awesome. We don't have to bill back. All units have dishwashers. Again, a plus in my opinion. Exterior is being painted. Good. That was the first thing I noticed on that first slide. Paint looks like crap up there. So they're painting it. Common area carpet less than a year old. All parking repaved. That's looking pretty good. Large storage unit in top floor of west building for maintenance supplies, etc. Room to increase rent. Probably. Broker remarks. Call that guy. Owner will require 48 hours to respond. Doing a 1031. Owner has not been to property in over a decade and rarely prior to that, and will not be completing a seller's property disclosure. It's a detriment to him. We can talk about that during that class. 1 unit being held vacant for showings until offer accepted. Photos show examples of different kitchens, etc. All units, same floor plan. Most leases 1 year, but month to month. 2 separate buildings. More photos and info downloaded soon, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, call Steve, right? Here's your potential rental income. The same kind of information we got from the previous one. Not going to spend a lot of time about there. So here's what you're going to run into with commercial buildings. You saw 16 unit building, you get to see 1. Then you get to make an offer. What if you didn't have pictures of the other, basically, sample size? You literally just got to walk in, the picture was the front of the building, you got to see 1 unit.
And it was the nicest one.
And you don't know. It could be the nicest one, and it could be the worst one. It could be some middle unit because it's just the one that went vacant, right? So how do you guys think about that? Is that scary? Like, hey, you're going to get to see 1 unit, you're going to make an offer on something that's going to cost millions of dollars, and yep, and so this is the commercial world versus kind of the single-family home duplex world, right? You have to make an offer. What if you saw no units? What if it was, hey, with an accepted offer, we will show you the units? It should be fine, right? Like, as long as you're willing to actually buy and you're operating in good faith, it shouldn't be a big deal. I know it seems really scary, but this is how the commercial world is going to work. It's much more common. So if the numbers look good to you, make an offer. James.
Yeah, that was sort of my comment, is that if you're looking at it, remotely, and you're not going to be able to see any units, and you could make an offer very quickly
Yes.
and act on this without even getting in your car in some cases.
Yes.
Yeah, Tammy
Yep.
said there would be no showings until an offer's been no showings until an offer's been accepted. So sure.
Yep. You can always back out later or negotiate based on what you find, assuming you've got the appropriate contingencies in your contract. And even if you're trying to make your offer super strong and you're like, hey, I'm going to have an inspection done, but I'm only looking to make sure that the units are in decent condition, right? You can write that into the contract. James can help you with the wording to say whatever you want. Hey, I'm only going to object to anything that costs more than $5,000 in one instance, or I'm only going to object if some of the units are not at least at this quality level, and then I'll object, right? So you can object in different ways, and you can write the contract with additional provisions and different contingencies. Here is the rent roll. I took out the people's names so they won't be on the video, but you can basically see there's one oddity in here I noticed. They said all the units were the same. I think this is just an error, but they said this one's a 2-bed, 1.5 bath, which I was like, well, that's weird. So recurring rent, basically we've got a range of $895 to, it looks like $995. So that's kind of the range. They're getting about $35, it looks like, for utilities. When I averaged that out, it came out to $968 per unit, including the utilities. They said it was $970, so I figured that's what they're using. It also shows deposits held, which this is pretty interesting information. On the unit I'm about to show you a case study on after we cover this, the deposits were all $250. So that doesn't cover like anything, right? But that was just how the property manager was operating. This is the financials that were given from the seller. So you can see average rent per unit $928 plus the $35. That's basically where I came up with they came up with $963 somehow. And there's some oddities on here too, right? They're saying pro forma, we think we can get $1095 per unit. Okay, why not do that? But a lot of people aren't. So insurance, management, right? Their management number, it's like 6.25%. Their repairs number is like 7% of their gross income. Taxes seem reasonable. Utilities is $5,000. What's weird is they're counting the $35 for each unit coming in for utilities, and it's unclear if that means they're paying $5,000 total in utilities, because if you're counting the income from utilities, you should be paying the full utility bill, or is that $5,000 above and beyond the $35? So that part, kind of unclear as to what's going on. I don't think I had anything else on that. Analysis. James, you want to pull up the spreadsheet? Do you want to walk them through the spreadsheet? I had to use the bathroom.
What's that, sir?
Do you want to walk them through the spreadsheet on this tab? Yep, just show the numbers.
All right, apparently I'm walking you through the numbers, which I've never seen before. So ARV, $2.8 million. Seller concessions, we're asking for $25,000 from the seller, and then those are going to handle our closing costs, which is this line 9 here. We're going to put 25% down. Down payment amount is going to be $700,000. We're assuming there's no rent-ready costs and that we're not doing a partnership, so you can ignore initial reserve amount. And then the loan amount is going to be 2.1, and the interest rate Brian put in here from before we talked to the room was 5.5. So I think we used 5.75 in the last one, but that's what we're doing there. And then the loan length, we're probably not doing interest only, so probably change that to 30 or something. I'm not sure if he intended to do that or not. Then you're not doing a second loan, finished square footage, just going to use something else there. So going over here, monthly rent, $15,408. That must be the number from the seller. And then the monthly other income, was that for laundry? Anyone remember? Is that laundry? And then, so basically here, your calculation vacancy amount, we're using 3%, $5,601 per year. Your gross operating income, $181,095. Did you turn off your microphone when you use the bathroom?
Yeah. No, I was just in there. I was going, James!
And then there's your expenses. You can continue from there.
Where did you get to?
Expenses. Top of expenses.
So I basically took the seller numbers from exactly what they did and I plugged them in here. If you want to scroll down, Royce, who found the mouse, apparently, that was on that computer. you can basically see that with the seller numbers, you're kind of at negative $611, right? Which, hey, it's pretty close. It's again in that range where, or how far under are the rents, right? If they're actually 1095 and they're averaging 925 now, that's significant. It's 16 units, right? So, Royce, just click over to the 16-plex pro forma. So basically what I did here was I said, hey, probably to get this property, you're probably not going to offer 2.75 and get it. It's probably going to be quite a bit of competition. 2.8 million with 25K back for seller concessions because your closing costs are probably going to be 25K, maybe a little more. 5.5% interest rate still. Can you change interest to 30?
Okay, yeah, that's what we changed on the other one too.
And then click on the monthly rent tab, the 17,520, just so I can see if I'm fairly sure I formulated it. Click right here. Yep. Royce doesn't use my spreadsheet, obviously. So 1095 times 16. So hey, if we can get 1095, what is this going to look like? And let's make the rest of the numbers actually seem like they're reasonable, right? So I said 1095 for that. Move your mouse. There you go. Anywhere but, yeah, go to the right. It's impossible. Laundry is about $150 per month. If you go back and look at their financials, it showed it was about $150 per month. So plug that in. I don't have any utilities coming in from the tenants here because I have 0 in utilities going out. So I'm basically saying we're going to bill back all utilities again. So that's how we're treating it because we don't know what the utilities are and whether the bill back's covering them. But within a year, we're going to get there, right? We're going to come to the tenants and say, you know, here's what the actual utilities cost. You're going to pay your fair share. This is what it is. It was 35, now it's 42, whatever that looks like. Taxes, 99.10. Those are probably, I don't know, fairly reasonable. But the insurance, whatever they were paying, I don't remember what they were paying. $5,000. That didn't seem reasonable at all. So you think $8,000 is reasonable? I was comparing it to another building that I own where the units are slightly more and the insurance was slightly more. So I figured that might actually be a little aggressive based on that quote, but I don't know. I put maintenance to 15 and I put management at 10, right? Not 7 and 6.25 or whatever they had because that's just not realistic. So scroll down to cash flow for me, Royce. He's lost his mouse. Page down also works. Nice. So we can see that the cash flow is negative 561, which honestly is relatively close. We bumped the rent up. We bumped our assumptions to what we think is reasonable. So $561 off a month on almost $3 million purchase isn't that far off for management. So if you actually can get more per unit in rent or you think you can long term, it's very, very close, right? It's basically, in essence, a break-even property. James.
Are you going to go and look at like a 20-year amortization schedule, which is more realistic than a 30-year we put in?
So the 30 years based on the loans that I was able to get.
Okay.
So no. But yes, if that's the loan that you can get, you should plug it in, just like everything else in the spreadsheet. So any questions on kind of, this is just a quick example of, hey, here's what the seller gave you. Now let's go back and be kind of realistic based on what we know. If you don't know what insurance is, call an insurance person up or call James and say, hey, do you have anyone that owns a 12 unit or an 8 unit where I can like take, hey, it was 8 and I can double it and be, you know, conservative with it for insurance. You know, you can go look tax information up yourself, right? Go find another building that's sold recently that's similar and look at what the tax rate is, right? These are things that you guys can go easily look up. You want to go back to the PowerPoint for me? Any questions on the 16-plex? Daryl.
I would be super interested in you know, the maintenance number is a pretty big driver and something that I don't feel totally, the maintenance numbers, you know, I don't feel super comfortable, you know, on picking that number, and I think it could be a pretty high driver, right? I know it's not 6%. Do you, I mean, you've owned a lot of properties. I'd be very interested in some historical stuff. I don't know, just as a, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have it in here, but I put some other stuff in here that I thought was interesting, but I did not put that in there. because I think it really depends on a couple things. How you choose to manage your properties, what kind of stuff you're putting in, what kind of tenants you're putting in, how your management company is dealing with it, and then what you actually find acceptable to do or not do to your property, right? Like James is going to go fix the gutters on the outside right away, where many people won't. They'll just let the water run in, and 20 years from now, it might damage the foundation and it might not. So
I'd just be interested.
yeah, we can talk about that offline for sure. I just don't have it in here.
I do have that one new data point that I had. Do you want me to mention that here? The one I told you about earlier today?
The data point he's going to mention is essentially the same as the data point that we have up here, which is about 15%. He's going to use 1 month of rent for Class A and 2 months of rent for Class C as an estimate for
per year.
Per year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if your rent is $1,500, or in this case, if your rent, what was our rent on this? The sixplex rent was $4,500. So it's a Class C property for sure. So that he would basically say your maintenance is $9K for the year.
And that number is from one of the larger property management companies in Denver.
Yep. So really quick, how could we improve the 16plex? We could raise rents. We talked about that. We could improve our tenants, right? We could go and improve management. We could improve the building, whether that's interior or exterior. It could be landscaping, painting. We could improve the common areas, right? There are lots of ways for you to improve your building, attract better tenants, and get more rent. How does price, interest rate, and rent impact cash flow? So in the spreadsheet, when you finish your kind of here's what I think the pro forma is, I would highly encourage you to go back and then move price from 2.8 million. What if I have to offer 2.9 to get it? What if I can actually get it at 2.7, right? And play with that and watch what it does to your cash flow, right? The higher the price, the more your loan payment, the lower your cash flow is going to be, right? Same thing with interest rate. If you're actually able to get 4 point whatever you said it was, 4.9, that's significant. You're talking about a loan size of like $2.1 million, right? The difference in a 0.6 percentage point of interest rate is going to matter. And then rent. Hey, what if I can actually get $11.95 per unit? What if I only get $8.95, right? And there's a rent sensitivity table already built into the spreadsheet on the right, but try that out. And we're not going to do that in the interest of time. So how many of you guys have ever been to this class when I've taught it before? Oh, wow. Been to this class when I've taught it. It was a year and a half ago was the last time I taught it. So this is a case study that for the last 3 times I've taught this, the case study's kind of been growing each year, just to give you an actual property that I have deep insight into and what's going on so that you can kind of see it. So this starts back in 2015. There's a 17plex that comes on the market, list price $875. Okay, we just saw a 16plex at $2.75 million. That's pretty awesome. Like right now you're going, man, I will pay $1.5 million for that, right? So a bit of backstory. Basically, James and I, were we with someone else?
We were with the consigliere.
Yeah. So we're out driving. The property comes up. Why were we in Greeley to begin with? To look at something else?
I think we were looking at that neighborhood on 85 and 34.
Oh, yeah. So we're out looking at other single-family homes. This property comes on, and we're like, hey, let's drive by it. You don't see 17-unit buildings come up. And like, we get out. It's all brick. It's 3-story. We walk around the property. We're like, this is really nice. Like, we're doing the math. Like, this is probably pretty good. And then James, like he always does, like, takes me back home, and I'm like, hey, I'll talk to you tomorrow, and I shut the door. We don't have a discussion about should we go write an offer, and I go inside, and I wake up to it's under contract that night.
So there's actually more to this story. While we were there,
yes,
we couldn't get in. First of all, we couldn't get in. No one was able to get into the unit, but while we were there, someone else had pulled up and was looking at it.
That
who
we know.
knew that was a serious
Multifamily buyer.
And I'm walking around the building doing this with my hand, warming up my offer writing hand.
Which means, oh, Brian's going to write an offer.
Yeah, exactly. So we knew that it was a good deal, and then we did not discuss it when we left.
Which is like it's the one time out of 400 that we've not discussed a deal, which was really odd given the size and the demand.
And I had the flu. I was like sick that night too.
Yeah, so it went under contract that next morning, I think, because I was like, hey, we should make an offer, and James is like, it's under contract, and I was so pissed because I was like, why did we not talk about this? I should have written an offer. That was stupid. And then Saturday, that was a Friday and the Saturday. Saturday went under contract. Basically, it wasn't under contract, so there was an offer that they had countered on back to the buyer, and it turns out, I found out later, I did not know this, turns out, because we wrote the offer once we found out, and we're like, hey, here's our offer, but I found out later that the person that it was countered to, I actually know, and he was really sick that night, and he looked at his phone and thought, I'll sign this in the morning, and put his phone down and went to sleep. In the meantime, the seller recanted his counter and withdrew it because he had gotten an offer for a significantly higher price from me and basically ended up being signed the offer with me. And so it turns out that other person is a person that sold me one of those properties that he bought for $300,000 and sold it to me for $720,000, which does really well. And he's a really good guy, and I didn't know it was him, but I've had lunch with him since, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. He's always like, how's that property doing? And I'm like, why are you asking? Do you just want me to grind it to you or what? So there's all sorts of backstory that's pretty crazy. But this is what the actual listing said. 17-unit all-brick, 3-story building with 10 garages. There's a bonus. Plus 18 additional off-street spaces. Income is current. Expenses are estimated. We know we're getting an income, but we have no idea what we're spending.
I want to make just a comment on the offer part of that thing, and that is, if someone gives you a counter, you can't delay. Even if you have until tomorrow to offer it, they can rescind it. They can actually pull that offer, counter offer back. So be super careful about that.
Large half-acre corner lot with mature trees that I will later have to cut. And easy access, pitched roof, newer hot water heaters, dishwashers, light fixtures, and many appliances, laundry facilities, close to schools and daycare, 5 blocks to UNC, with market rents of $725 for a 2-bedroom and $595 for 1-bedroom. Remember, this is like 2015? It's got to be 2015. I don't know. You'll see in a sec. And $55 per month per garage. Remember that point for a little bit. Gross income will be $147,000. Owner is a licensed real estate broker. That also plays into it a little bit later. So this is the building. It's 3-story. The bottom level is garden. There's 2 stories. The previous seller put these green awnings on there. How do you like those green awnings? Let me just say that all the snow and water drips right off of this onto this, which is tiled. Makes no sense. But that's the building. This is the building from the back. These are the trees that will later need to be trimmed off of the roof and the bushes that will need to be trimmed. So here's the available information prior to offer. So I'm trying to give you the full story. Chances are high I won't get done by 8 o'clock. But the goal here is for you to see deeply inside of what actually happens when you buy a building like this, right? So that you can get some experience from my experience, so that if you go out and you buy an 8-plex or a 16-plex or a 24-plex or a 100-unit building, hopefully this is super helpful. Ask any questions you want. Here's the information that was available prior to the offer. The rent roll, one of them's vacant. You can see, I mean, $475 to $625 is like the highest rent in like 2015. It's 2014 or 2015. Had to be 2015. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's still crazy low. Seller's disclosure, I got an ILC. We walked the outside of the property. Remember, haven't been inside. Why can't I think of what it is? It's basically it's a survey, but the very fast version of it. What is it called?
Survey?
Well, what's it called?
Improvement location certificate.
Thank you. Here was the information in the listing. So parking space is 20. There's 5 1-bedrooms, 12 2-bedrooms. That's obviously important, right? Remember that other number that they gave on the other page that was like 147? This is what they're getting now, 113. It's crazy. They're basically saying, yeah, $30K a year, we don't care. That's crazy, but that's typical, right? Maybe they've owned it for a long time. Other income, $900, that's probably laundry, taxes, all the kind of normal stuff. Common area maintenance, $11,500. Like 17 units, are they really only spending $11,000 per year on maintaining it? Probably not, right? And then you've got some other repairs and maintenance. Maybe they're only spending $3,000 on maintenance and all the inside is garbage. Who knows? But here's your average rent. This is insane, right? So when you see a property like that, I was like, man, that's really low. There's definitely upward room.
Yeah, and the other thing to be careful about is when you're looking at these things, don't read too far into their numbers. Their numbers could just be all hose.
Yeah.
Some people would look at that, oh, they're only spending $3,000 a year on maintenance. These units are going to be really, really rough, and they will just automatically talk themselves out of the deal.
Yep. So this is the number I want you to remember, $94.50, because that is essentially the number that they're telling us is rent. So knowing that, what should we offer? Apparently, we're going to take a look at Excel.
And realize that we know that there is an offer in, but it has not been accepted yet. There's a counter out, and so you have to be strong coming in.
Yeah. And I actually learned later that the other buyer who didn't actually end up with the property had been talking to this seller for like 6 months or like longer than that, saying, hey, when are you going to be ready to sell that? I want to buy it. I want to buy it. Thought he had it all locked up. And then the seller actually listed it on the MLS just as a like afterthought. And then he got tons of interest, and that's why he rescinded his counter. So,
which tab do you want?
Seller info, the one to the right. We're just going to move our way across. So here's 875. Here's our rent. All the numbers are plugged in basically with what the seller gave. If you want to scroll down just to show cash flow.
Looks like you put in good maintenance numbers, 15%.
So I added all of his stuff up and made it that number, yeah. I think that, yeah, we can go back up in a sec. But basically, monthly cash flow, right? Kind of where he was at was 14% cash on cash. So scroll up for me, just so we can see. That's no management, right? Because looking at his numbers, he's basically paying no management. And
I will be off in a second.
utilities are $25,000. I think that's what you saw, Daryl. And this utility or this maintenance number basically matched that 3,000 plus his 11,000 plus something else that was a couple thousand. So I basically tried to match the seller's numbers exactly as a starting point, right? So this is merely a starting point. So scroll back down to cash flow. So I also have 20% in, and I've got 5.3% interest rate, which is what I thought I could get at that point in time. So cash flow, this looks stupendous, right? I mean, $2,200 a month on $875,000 purchase price or somewhere in there. What do we think we're going to need to offer? What would you offer now knowing you've heard the entire story? It's $875, rewind in time. Don't think about what the 16-plex is worth, $2.75 million in Longmont. But rewind to 2015 and go, there's another person offering. How much more do I need to offer to make sure I get this property? What do you guys offer? $1,950,000? $1 million? $1 million?
That's a really aggressive amount over. 100,000 over on a $900,000 property. I mean, that's like a, yeah, right.
Yeah.
I get the numbers are like really, really
So scroll up
compelling,
and
but
put $1
that's
million
still
in there.
crazy. And you got to realize too, it's got to appraise, and you don't know if it's going to appraise. And so now, are you willing to bring $70,000 to the table if you don't think it's going to appraise for that, in addition to your $250,000 down?
Yeah. So Royce just stuck $1 million in there. Scroll down. Let's see what cash on cash is. It's still 10%.
Without property management.
Yes, without property management. So we're going to do that on the next tab. So yes. So let's just move over a tab. This probably has the right answers in it, actually. So it does. So I ended up offering $50K more, right? $50K seemed like a really good number. Like, hey, I don't want you to sign the counter for $875 or whatever you were under contract with or almost under contract with. I want you to decide $50K is enough for you to sign my offer right now, today, and I will guarantee I'm going to close as close to guarantee as possible.
Yeah, and it wasn't just price. It was also a super strong offer otherwise, too.
Yep. And it was also $30K of earnest money that went hard in 10 days. So if I couldn't get my loan, 30K is gone, right? For any reason, it didn't matter. So I got to go do the inspection and walk all the units. Basically, after I had been through that and we agreed, the earnest money went hard. Can't appraise, can't get your loan. Either you're coming up with extra money or you're losing 30K. So,
Are you going to talk about your phone-a-thon that evening?
yeah. I guess now is as good of any time. So I'm usually pretty hard on myself. And this was one of the nights where I actually felt like I had done a good job. I basically spent 4 hours on the phone because I was not sure, A, where I was going to come up with all the down payment, B, where I was going to get what amounted to be a really big loan at that point in time. And so I spent 4 hours on the phone contacting people and basically was able to raise either the ability to get the loan through private lenders and find partners for down payment in about 4 hours. And that was kind of a huge win. So all the stuff that you guys are doing today and all the contacts you're making and being able to pick up the phone and do that and having the kind of rapport with private lenders and with other lenders and with partners that have down payment money, it all matters because one day you may have 10 days to risk $30,000 to make that happen. And you need to be able to call and be like, are you sure? Yes, and you need to be able to trust. And so I ended up using a private lender to close on this, and it was the first deal I had done with him, and I was super nervous because I was like, are you gonna like show up at closing with the money, or am I screwed $30,000? Because if you don't show up, there's no backup funds at that point at the closing table. So all the stuff that we teach in here about building rapport with sellers and partners and buyers, it all matters because it comes around. So 925 was what basically ended up happening. I had to end up putting down me and a partner about $275,000. And the first loan amount was $650. I did make a mistake here with the private lender because I basically told him I probably need $650. What I probably should have said was I need $750 because he just stuck to the $650, which was fine. It was interest only and it was 5.3. So better cash flow, interest only, no loan pay down. Click on this tab for me. Sell. Well, at least I know where the mouse is. And the page down button. So this is basically 725 times 12 plus 595 times 5, right? We're still paying utilities. I put management at 10%. I put maintenance at 13.5. This is laundry income. So this is basically like I went, man, it is like a no-brainer to go get 725 for the 2 bedrooms and 595 for the 1 bedroom. That should be a piece of cake, no problem.
And I think part of what made you confident is you had other rent comps that you were aware of with similar numbers that you thought were going to be similar units.
Well, this is still so far below market rent.
Agreed,
that
but
it's kind of crazy.
But when you see someone else getting numbers and you're like, I know these other rent comps, I have intimate knowledge of these, I have the confidence to make an offer based on what I think my numbers are.
So I had a property I had a multifamily property in Evans. It's the one I talked about at the beginning that I bought for $300. And it was renting like in worst neighborhood, worst condition, and the 2 bedroom, 1 bath were renting for like $795. So $725 was like, I'm totally doing something really wrong if I can't get that. So that's what that is. Go ahead and scroll down to cash flow. So we kind of plugged in realistic numbers. You know, part of it's still using seller numbers, but it's like, hey, I think I can get the rent to here. And we're still at 11.8%. It's now fully managed, right? So 11.8% cash on cash, fully managed. How many of you would buy that property? Yes, yeah. Brian bought it twice. He's the winner. Yeah, Mike.
Oh, wait, microphone.
You must wait for the microphone.
What about the garages? Are those included in there?
So I don't include any garage rent here.
Oh, okay.
And we'll get to that. Keep that $55 per garage in mind.
It didn't say 55 on the seller thing. It said like
Nope.
25 for one of the garages.
Yeah,
so.
but in his listing, it's
Right, it said
$55 per garage. So switch back over to PowerPoint for me. So I looked at that and I went, hey, at 925, this thing still looks amazing, even with my kind of numbers in there. So that's a weird, perfect. So how do you fund the purchase? Is it a loan? Is it you or a loan partner? Is it private money, hard money? How are you going to fund it, right? You've got to go figure this out. That's kind of what we just talked about. Down payment, same thing. Is this you? Is it partners? Are you going to go form a partnership to do it? Family and friends come in really handy. Call your rich uncle.
Do you
James.
remember if we did a lender letter for this?
We did.
Where did we get it from? Was it the lender? Was it your?
I think
Oh,
that was
I
a different.
do remember this.
Yeah, we've definitely used another private lender that we know, but I think he actually gave us a letter too, but it may not have been the day of the offer. You might be right. It might have been, hey, I need a letter, and someone else already had all my information. So again, contacts matter, right? It's crazy how many things had to go right for this to actually go smoothly. So offer was accepted at 9:25. Now what happens, right? Simple stuff, right? Should have already had your LLC in place, but again, we walked around the property one night and we're under contract a day and a half later. Go do all the stuff that we teach you in asset protection, get insurance quotes. Key thing here, right? Our additional provision was we get the right to go tour all of the units as soon as we're under contract. And so I think it was like Monday or Tuesday, we were out there thinking, this is going to be a long morning. I think we took Wes with us.
We did, and he did like a different thing instead of by unit or something weird.
Yeah, so the inspector basically, we said, we're going to give you about 15 minutes in each unit. Do what you can do, right? I don't care if drawers don't open and close. The property manager will handle that later. I care. Does the oven work? Does the fridge work? Are the systems working, right? How are kind of the major things in each unit, and document that. And so we would go in a unit, we would spend 15 minutes, we would come out. We'd go to the next unit, and we did the whole thing, and then he did the outside. So it was a long morning, and I remember James and I walking into units going, this looks way better than I thought it was going to look, right? And then we'd walk in the next one and be like, this is even better, right? And
We
it
were
was like,
pleasantly surprised on a lot of them.
yeah, and I mean, there were a couple units that were just like, hey, somebody's been living here for a long time, it's dirty, and needs to be cleaned up and repainted and refloored. But for the most part, the units were in decent condition. Do your inspection, do your due diligence docs, make sure you can fund your loan. It's a key. This was a month of sweating for me because I was just not sure until closing table, and even at the closing table, I was like, the rep was late by like 20 minutes, and I was like, I hope you already have the wire. Like, good grief. Get your partners in line, obviously. So, it's 2013. Oh, this is his info. So here's the info that the seller actually gave. It looks like it's pretty good info until you realize, why are you handwriting things in a spreadsheet? So there's rental income, which is totaling, $76,000 for the year. If you divide by 17 and divide by 12, somebody want to do that for me really quick? Rough 70. You can do 77,000 divided by 12 divided by 17.
I think he's looking at you, Royce.
No, they're all doing it.
377.
So in 2013, they were averaging $377 per unit in rent. Something's going wrong, right? That tells you this is not right. Remember, the number he gave was like 147, right? So you don't see anything else. You got a bunch of late fees, and this is kind of where you can add all the other numbers up, right? Carpet replacement, all right? You can see the big stuff that's going on. So 2014 numbers, oddly enough, 59,000. This one's handwritten. For some reason, the 2014 number is also handwritten, right? Where's the really interesting part is management fees expense. At some point, we calculated that he had basically been paying the property manager like $200 a month total, like every month, total. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. So yeah, so this is the stuff that you're going to get. And this is more than you'll get in some cases and less in others, right? If you were buying a property from me, you would get a lot more. If you're buying a property from other people, you'll get nothing. So you have to make do with what you have. I know. So this is what the seller had to say. Since the statements showed modest income and heavy expenses, some explanation may be helpful. During the first 6+ years of ownership, the property was poorly managed by 2 different property managers. And when the property was turned over to the current property manager, there was excessive vacancy. Several of the existing tenants were behind, and some of the best tenants had moved out. During the past 2.5 years, the manager spent his efforts evicting several undesirable tenants and rehabbing those units and others that were vacant. Seems reasonable. In addition, several physical improvements were made, including the addition of 2 new oversized hot water heaters, one of which was leaking later, various furnace repairs and plumbing repairs, a new porcelain front exterior porch, where you can kill yourself very easily, or something, I don't know. New hallway chair rails, front door, paint, carpeting, and a reconditioning of various apartments. Prior to this, new dishwashers, light fixtures, and wood blinds were installed in all of the apartments. At this point in time, the manager has received applications for renting the final unit. Dun, dun, dun. 2.5 years to fill the building up. Think about that. The anticipated rent is $725 per month with $40 a month for gas. They started to bill back. That's good. This was a ground floor unit, 2-bedroom. So $725 in 2015. Once that's accomplished, the manager will turn his attention to increasing all of the existing rents and monthly contributions to gas up to the current 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom market rents as the leases turn over. No recent efforts have been spent to market and rent the garages. The anticipated rent is $50 to $60 per month. Only one is rented at $25 per month. So there are 9 garages sitting vacant. The rent on this has been historically low, right? And so if you just looked at the numbers, you might be like, well, I can't make a profit off of this, right? And even without this backstory, you have to go do your own due diligence, right? Because if you're like, hey, they're getting $500 a month in rent, like I can't make money on that. James?
Do you happen to remember what the seller bought the property for and when?
No, he owned it for, what did he say?
6 years?
8.5 years, I think.
8.5 years? I'm just kind of curious if it was like a capital gains play instead of a cash flow play.
I want to say it was like 600, but I honestly don't remember. So here's what the inside looked like. I believe this is the rehabbed unit. So they didn't obviously redo the cabinets. They did redo the countertops. There's a new dishwasher, clearly a new stove, a new fridge, new flooring, new paint. One of the things that boggles my mind is they actually did two-tone paint in the middle of the wall, which two-tone paint is fine. Your ceiling's white, your walls are like a beige or something. I'm not opposed to that. Doing a two-tone wall makes no sense in a rental to me. Here's the bathrooms. What do you mean, ooh? This stuff's worth money on like Craigslist. There's extra gold right there. This trash can is filled with leaking wet towels that are leaking from the hole in the ceiling in this bathroom as we saw it. There's a picture of Wes actually standing on this tub that I have that I'll use when we have him in. But, you know, all in all, like it's old tile, it's green, there was yellow, there was pink. I think it was just there was blue. So you had multiple colors, but it was all in relatively decent condition, right? It's not like you need to go in and rip it out. Here's what the bedrooms look like. Again, the two-tone wall makes 0 sense to me. These are the boilers. They are like this big each and like deeper than my arms. These pipes are like crazy big, and apparently, I'm not sure why, but I had to replace a boiler in a different property, and the boiler was like this big to basically service about what those are servicing. So I'm not sure why they're so darn big. But yeah, so what do we think the rent range is and how do we find out? We go use Craigslist like we talk about in many other classes. We find similar apartments. We ask our property manager, hey, what do you think this is going to rent for, right? Use your own knowledge. Like James pointed out, hey, you already knew kind of a worse property what the rent range would be. So I thought, hey, it's probably $725 to $795, and I'm trying to be conservative, right? And it was also likely we could bill back for all the utilities. So we already looked at the pro forma for that. Let me see what the next slide is. Do you want to go to Excel just really quick for me? So we talked about this. Go to the next tab for me. So this was kind of you can go back to PowerPoint because I got to run through the slide before I run through that. So purchase completed. So 2015, which was not a full year of my ownership, what did that look like? It appraised at $1.025 million. 100K in equity, woohoo, done, right? What was really odd about this was the appraisal wouldn't have been able to get done in time for the private lender to close when I needed him to close. So he agreed that I could just have the appraisal done after he funded the loan. And I was like, well, what if it doesn't appraise? And he's like, then it doesn't appraise. I'm like, you realize you're not going to have any recourse. Like, you can't come back and say, well, you need to make up the difference. And he was already at a 30% down payment from me, so he had some room before he was worried. But that was a little troubling too, right? I basically paid out of pocket for an appraisal that was useless.
And that's unusual, by the way. Don't expect your lenders
Yes.
to be okay with,
Yes.
oh, we'll just do the appraisal after the fact,
Yes.
and we'll see how it goes.
Yep. So year one, as you can imagine, was a year of let's fix all the bad stuff that's been going on, right? Let's go raise rents. Property manager, go raise rents. Start building back all the utilities. Get off of the one-page lease with a $250 security deposit and move to an actually decent lease so that we have repercussions. There were situations where people were doing things in the building and my property manager, because of the lease that was used, couldn't do anything about it. So they actually had to go post house rules and then basically start emailing letters like, you're violating the house rules, you're violating the house rules. On the third time, we're going to post a notice. So that kind of sucks. So leases matter. Come to our lease class. Most of the tenants said, hey, $55 to $75 in bill back for utilities that they weren't previously paying, we're not moving. That was awesome. One unit did a complete remodel on the entire unit, new kitchen, new bath, looked fantastic, and it rented for $895 a month. And at that point, I was like, right? Too much. I think it's at the bottom of this slide. It was a lot.
Plus bill back, right?
Huh?
Plus bill back.
Yes, $895, that's just rent, right? And so I knew, hey, I can get $895 for a completely remodeled unit, but remodeling the unit costs more than it made sense to go and do all of them, right? Because that's probably where you're going. Replace the garage doors, because a lot of them were dented, and they were ugly, and they just needed to be replaced in order to start renting them out. Cleaned up the landscaping, fixed the gutters for James. He hates bad gutters if you've ever seen a house with him. Handled just tons of deferred maintenance everywhere, right? Glass is broken, this is leaking. So it was about $24K in CapEx and another $20K in repairs and maintenance. So this is what you need to be prepared for, right? It's not buy the property, get that amazing cash flow, right? $44,000 just for that stuff got spent, right? Did I make any money in 2015? No. I made 60 grand? You mean off of this? Yeah, it's not in my pocket. That's like stock, right? Had another 10K insurance claim from a collapsed pipe that basically collapsed the ceiling into the lower unit because somebody left the boiler pipes run, and if you leave a window open in the winter, the hot water will freeze faster, and so the cold air comes in and it freezes boiler pipes. So that sucked. A bunch of cleaning, 6K was insurance, 14.5K for utilities because I was paying some of those until bill back got basically instituted with all the tenants. Basically, after depreciation, this property broke even. After depreciation. That means I lost money. So it looks really good on paper, and then you should expect, and I've told other partners that I've partnered with on other larger multifamily stuff, expect to just earn nothing in the first 2 years. If that's your expectation going in and you're working towards a goal, you do better than that, you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I think that's hard for a lot of people who are going to go drop $3 million on a large multifamily who think, hey, listen, now I'm in it, I'm making money because I bought this huge, ideally cash flowing multifamily, and then 3 years later, now you're just starting to.
Yep. So click over to this spreadsheet for me. Alt-tab it. So click on the cell right here, this cell, this one. Yep, that one. Click on it. So 795 times 12 plus 695 times 5, that's kind of what I felt like after the year, gosh, I should be able to get to this with rents. And then the rest of the money, or the rest of the information is kind of all mostly the same. Notice that this still includes all the utilities, and there's no utility bill back actually in there, right? I don't have 55 per unit or anything. So scroll down to cash flow for me. Cash flow is still $3,000 a month and 12.5%. So I'm going, hey, how much can we improve the property? How much can we increase rent? And that's the goal. Back to PowerPoint, please. Thank you. So what's year two? This is the first full year of ownership. What's year two look like? Obviously, summertime comes, lots of units are being turned over, right? Bad tenants are being removed. Tenants that don't want to actually have their rent increase, because some of these tenants are at like $475, and it's like, sorry, look around. Like, we got to raise it like at least $200 if you want to stay. Because I didn't want to turn over 24 units at once, right? That's not the goal. If you buy a 24-unit building, don't turn them all over at once, right? Turn maybe a third of them each year for the first 3 years, right? Because otherwise, you're just adding to your expenses and your pain. Right, put some LVT flooring in. It's like what you're standing on or sitting on now. Like a lot of new paint. Put some new bathrooms in. Some of the tiles falling off the wall. Some of the sinks are broken. You know, took out that beautiful blue and yellow tile and blue toilets. I mean, who doesn't want a blue toilet? 2-bedroom rent was now essentially $895 plus $85 for utilities. So that right there is insane, right? We've gone from $725 to $895 on 17 units. The 1-bedroom rent's up to $795 plus $65 in utils. By the way, the bill back for utils equals the previous year of payment, right? You're not trying to make it a profit center. You're not saying, oh, I paid $12,000 in the year, I'm going to bill back $15,000. Don't do that. It's not a good practice. Garage rent, $50 to $75 each. I was like, there is an extra $750 a month that is free. Go rent these out. Get them rented immediately.
How long did it take you to rent the garages?
Not long.
Like a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one with very little turnover.
Or maintenance.
Yes, because they're cement. Although they are garages that are like this tall. I mean, they're like.
They're not that tall.
They're 5.5 foot.
What?
Or like, that's what the door is. They're
Oh,
taller inside,
yeah.
but the door, like you can't park a truck in there.
That's even better. It's like a garage where you have to store stuff and you can't
Right.
actually get a car in there.
Yeah. So gross income basically at the end of this year was now over $16,000 a month when you include rent, utilities, pet rent, garage, and laundry. So what was the number that he had at the bottom of his sheet that we talked about? I said, remember this number. $94.50. We've gone from less than $10K to $16K in 2 years. What does that do to the value of the building? Yeah, makes it a completely different building, right? After all the work that went into this building, it's probably likely that it about broke even in 2016 too, before depreciation this time.
So basically 2 years, you're like no money in this thing.
Yep. However, where's that cash flow going? It paid for all the stuff that needed to be done. So the building's supporting itself. It's not like I'm coming out of pocket, here's $44,000. The building over time has paid for that.
Which is really good.
Which is amazing, right? It's like, hey, here's a building, 2 years from now, hopefully it's going to throw off major cash flow, but in the meantime, it's just supporting itself, right?
Fair question.
What do you think it was worth at the end of year 2? You increased the rents like
I had my own
50%?
thoughts, but I mean, it was well over $1 million, obviously. I was thinking it was 1.2, 1.3.
And we're going to see the number. We'll see
Yeah.
the number in a few minutes, right?
Yeah. There's lots of people that have called on this building and been like, hey, you know, we noticed you have this building, you know, we'd have a buyer that would like to buy it. And I'm like, great, make me an offer. And I was like, you know, at this point, I think my number was like 1.9, right? I'm like, if you want to buy it for 1.9, I'll probably sell it to you. But otherwise, no. So no cash flow after expenses, right? Was this a good investment? For me, yes. For everyone, no, right? If you needed that cash flow immediately, then no. If you had a partner that was willing to maybe pay the expenses and go from there, then yes. I definitely would buy it again. So 2017, several units turned again, obviously. The goal in 2017 was pushing the rents of the current tenants to be closer to market rent. We'd been a little bit nice trying not to have 17 units turn over at once. So it was like, hey, you know, we'll raise it from $475 to $675. But now it's like, hey, market rent is, you know, $895. We're pushing you to like $850, right? And if you don't like it, then you're going to need to move, and we'll re-rent it for $895. So a lot of the people stayed because they start looking elsewhere and they go, still the cheapest thing around, $850. I'm in. So that's what rents were. Garage rent went up a little bit, $75 to $80. The plan was to install all new doors. So there's 22 doors that would have become metal doors, and all new flooring. So it's 3 stories, basically putting LVT flooring on the interior hallways and in the laundry room. It ended up getting postponed. It'll get done in 2019. It's about a $30,000 to $32,000 cost, but it should make 2019's leasing season go really well. because it will look really sweet. Cash out refinance was completed. I was able to get a 12-year fixed rate at 4.64 with 30-year amortization, which is pretty incredible because when I filled out the loan paperwork, they were like, we think it's going to be 5.05, and the market just kind of creeped down, and he was like, literally the day before I locked, he's like, it's at like 4.84 or 4.82, and then you just send in your lock form with a check, and it's like, I want to lock because I need to lock, and then they tell you what rate you got after you lock. And he came back and he was like, you got 4.64, wow. It's just like crazy.
What's the check you need to send in? Approximately how much for the rate lock?
I think it was 1%
Of the loan amount? Question?
How much did you finance at this point?
This is my next bullet.
Oh.
So, it's not my next bullet, I lied. So prepayment penalty in the balloon obviously is due in 12 years, so that's the downside to commercial loans like we talked about before. The property appraised at 1.5 mil, and the loan amount was 1.162.
What'd you have in it to this date?
Cash out basically gave me back more than I had actually used to purchase the property. So I now, in 2.5 years, have a property that has given me all of my money back and is putting off cash flow, and I basically have negative money in the deal.
Okay.
Divide by zero error, yes.
So was it like a $200K cash out, you think, approximately?
It was about 250.
250,000 you pulled out in additional cash, in addition to what you basically got your down payment back, you paid off the original loan.
Yeah, so what really happened was I took the first loan. The first loan was $650,000. About a year later, I took a second loan against the property for cash out so that I could go buy a different property. And then this loan basically paid both of those loans off, and it was $200 to $250 cash out, which was basically, if you look at the down payment, it's like $270 or something like that.
Are you going to show what cash flow is now with the new loan?
I think so, right here.
There you go. Awesome.
Yeah. So property is now cash flowing about $3K each month. So I have got more money than I put in, and I get $3,000 a month out, and the rents are still going up. Plan for 2018, which we're already halfway through. So obviously several units are turning this summer. Even more aggressive, pushing tenants to market rent. So I was just like, market rent is this. We're going to push you to $25 or $35 below market rent, because most of the people aren't going to go anywhere, and a lot of them are close enough anyway, and otherwise you're just leaving money on the table. So 2-bedroom rent is now $945, plus some utility costs. 1-bedroom rent's $875, which is insane, right? That unit that I fully remodeled that got $895 2 years ago, and then $925 the next year, basically all of them are getting $945 now. So
and your utilities look like they're going down because your utilities have gone down for the year before when you're kind of doing your bill back?
Yeah, so the first year was an estimation, right?
Okay.
Like, hey, I think it's about this much based on the seller information. And then it was like, oh, that's not right. And so each year it adjusts a little bit. Garage rent's now $75 to $90, so that's gone up. Lowest rent of any unit this year will be $845 per month versus $475 when purchased. Parking lot got resealed and restriped. This was a condition of the loan. So one of the things you'll notice when you're working with a commercial lender is they're much more picky. They come out every year, they do an inspection, and they say, these 5 things need to be fixed. By 6 months from now, you have 60 days to tell us how you're going to do it. And you need to respond. And so this was one of the things, and that ends up costing you money that you would not otherwise do. This parking lot did not need restriping and resealing.
What was the consequence if you don't do the actual maintenance that they
They could call the loan due if they wanted.
So basically, you'd have to pay that whole $1 million loan
Yeah,
back.
I don't think they would. I think what they would really do on something like this is they'd go do it themselves and charge you.
Sure, that makes sense. Do you have a question? Someone have a question?
Income should be above $17,000 a month in rent plus utilities plus garage plus laundry. So you can see we've gone from $9,450 to $17,000. I don't know that we'll peak above $17,000 for a couple of years, but that's $17K was the number in my head when I bought it. It was like in 4 to 5 years we should be at $17,000, and so this year we're going to get there, which should be awesome. And that is the entire kind of case study on the 17-plex. Anyone have questions?
Do you consider it to be stabilized at this point where it's kind of just flowing along? So you've you basically got all your money out plus a pretty big chunk, and now you've got good cash flow coming in on it, and you're just going to cash flow it until someone makes you a ridiculous offer to buy it or something.
No, there's a balloon with a prepayment for 12 years.
So you're keeping it for 12 years, and then someone can make it.
Yeah,
crazy.
if anyone wants to buy a 17-plex in 11.9 years, let me know.
There you go. Any questions about 17?
Questions on the 17-plex? No questions. Okay, well, I got a couple other wrap-up slides, of course. So just general thoughts, right? When you're thinking about buying multifamily, think about what your goals are. And James alluded to this. My buying criteria is not your buying criteria. We teach a class where I actually share my exact buying criteria, and then it's a starting point for you to think about what yours are. Don't use someone else's, but definitely figure out what your minimums are. What's your minimum cash on cash? Where do you want to buy? What location? What kind of buildings? Stuff like that. I put a lot of weight on cash because in the majority of my buying, I've been looking to have extra income. That's been the goal. And I'm willing to wait a couple of years to get that extra income if the deal supports that. So what's reasonable in our current market, right? You can't probably go find something that's going to be 15% cash on cash in our current market. If you can, you should buy it. Or you should call me. And I'll partner with you or help you buy it or whatever. Set your personal minimum and stick to it. If your personal minimum is 5% cash on cash and you're managing it and you come upon something and it's like 4.2 and you're like, well, maybe my expenses are just a little too high and I could probably trim some off here, and you make it work at 4.2, you're going to be unhappy later, right? If there's a valid reason to change your criteria or there's another valid reason to buy the house, like I had set criteria for Fort Collins and I found a house that was undervalued, and so I was paying like $30,000 less for the house, but I wasn't going to make as much cash flow, and I was like, I'm willing to make that trade. Valid reason. Not a valid reason is, oh, I think I can make it work. I'm just going to charge more rent than I'm probably going to get, and I'm going to pay less in expenses. Don't do that to yourself. How can you add value to the property? We talked about these things. Figure out what this looks like in the spreadsheet for yourself. Run conservative, best and worst cases, right? If you're not running the worst case of kind of, hey, is the worst case really $475 per month in rent on the 17-plex? No, right? Is it maybe $795 given current market conditions? That seems maybe reasonable. Don't be like doomsday worst condition, but figure out, hey, when this bad happens, what's going to happen? Am I just going to be break even for a while, or am I actually going to lose the property because I can't afford it anymore? That's a huge, huge difference. How sensitive are your numbers? We talked about going through, adjusting price, adjusting rent. Figure out where the sensitivity is, and then figure out what you can do about it, if anything. Rent, obviously the biggest unknown for most people. When we teach the normal deal analysis class, people are always like, I don't know how to figure out rent. Is it $1,500 or is it $1,700, right? Go and figure that out. But run some stuff and some scenarios that say, what if I only get this? Or what if I get less than this? How bad really is it going to be? Use the analysis. Overcome the fear, push yourself outside the comfort zone a little bit. But then go make the offer. Make James go like this. Make him write an offer for you. And then make him drive to Grover. James, I'm only buying my next property if we take a trip to Grover, and you're going without me. So do the work to get realistic inputs, right? A lot of people are like, oh, I don't know how much it costs to replace 20 doors. Sure you do. How much does it cost to buy one door? How much does it cost to have one door installed? Multiply by 20. Maybe try and get a discount if you're calling somebody to do the work. It's that simple. Don't make it harder than it seems. How much do new floors cost? I don't know. How much does it cost to lay LVT down per square foot? Call any flooring company. In fact, call 3 and get 3 quotes, right? I have a 1,200 square foot apartment. I want all LVT. There's 2 toilets you're going to need to move and appliances. How much is that going to cost me, right? Rental quality LVT. You'll get quotes. Call your insurance agent. Call your lender. Figure this stuff out. It's not complicated. The spreadsheet's like seems overwhelming because you're like, oh, there's so much stuff I don't know. Take it one thing at a time. It will not be that hard. Research your area. Run rental comps. Figure out what that rent actually looks like. You need to know your market. Does the 1% rule work in our market? Sometimes, but usually not. The 1% rule is like 1 month of rent. If you're going to go buy a $300,000 property, it would rent for $3,000 a month. That's the 1% rule. Does that work in our market for single-family homes? It's not even close. Does the 2% rule work? You're getting $6K for that $300,000 house? No, these are rules you're going to see on Bigger Pockets all the time. Bigger Pockets is great, but it's in different markets. The 50% rule is essentially 50% of your income is going to go towards taking care of your expenses and everything else. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. Figure out what your market does. Or do you say, I'm only buying if I get $100 a door, or $200 a door, or $300 a door? You'll see this conversation a lot online. It's not necessarily applicable to our market. So write your own criteria and figure out what's important to you. Look at actual maintenance. Look at cap expense dollars. Don't just assign a percentage. Every time I went through any of those analysis, I went and I looked at what is the seller providing, what do I know from my own experience, and I came up with a reasonable number. I didn't just, oh, it's a multifamily, 15%. You can do that, but to Daryl's point, he's like, that's a big window. It could be 12% or it could be 20. Push those numbers up and down. Look at the sensitivity. See how that works out. Is it enough to replace flooring and paint every few years, right? Go actually think about filling out that CapEx table and going, how much am I actually probably spending every year? And a hot water heater, and a new roof, outside paint, right? There's all sorts of stuff. So in summary, don't let this stuff scare you away, right? Larger properties can be super profitable, right? Take advantage of them. Make sure you're doing it the right way. A lot of the times, this is what people don't understand. You're going to do almost as much work to buy a single-family home as you are to buy a 20-unit apartment. You're just adding a zero to the end of your buy cost, your expenses, and your income. So would you rather make $100 or would you rather make $1,000 a month for one transaction, right?
Yeah,
Think about it
and
that
to
way.
like use your deal as an example, someone might have bought a single family home that was a little undervalued, needed some work to kind of turn it around, and a few years later they may have been able to do a refi and pull out $25,000 or $20,000, and you, because you're doing 17 units, the check was a lot bigger,
right?
And now your cash flow is a lot bigger. I mean,
Right.
it might have been $300 a month or so with the other property, or $150, and now
Yep.
it's $3,000 or whatever it is.
Yep. Validate your assumptions. Don't make stuff just blind. Go validate it. Call people up. Get quotes. You're going to need larger reserves, right? Add a zero to your reserve account as well. Find opportunities to increase your property value. You are forcing the appreciation, and this is one of the few places where you can actually make the difference. The property moving from $94.50 in rent to $17K a month in rent moves the value dial a lot, right? Because people are like, man, the income from this property is $17,000 a month. I'm willing to pay X dollars for that, right? I don't care how much the building is actually worth in terms of how much it costs to build it. A lot of times, this isn't work you're going to have to do. You're going to have to manage your property manager, but hire a great property manager and they can do this for you. And like you saw, right, the opportunity wasn't day one. So don't be afraid to get in there and get dirty. The other property that I talked about selling in the very beginning that I bought for $300,000, it was the same exact thing as this. It was rents are low, people have been managing it who don't know what they're doing. Step in, start raising rents. Takes 3 years to get it up and stabilized, right? Expect that. If it goes faster, fantastic. You can't correct everything in 50 units or 10 units. Single family home, one tenant, goodbye. Better tenant, better rent, done. Seems really easy, one turnover cycle. Here, can happen. It may only take you 1 or 2 of these units to fully fund your retirement versus 12 single family homes or 20 single family homes or whatever you're looking for, right? A couple of these deals and then working to pay them down and pay them off. If this is paid off, this is an amazing building. I tell you that. It's like crazy. So that's all I have. Sorry we went a little long. Hopefully that was useful. Let me know if you have any questions.
Any final questions for anybody? Yeah, question.
So as far as when the property started and the condition you purchased it in was probably a different class, like Class A, Class B?
It's still Class C.
It is? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to move. It's hard to move class unless you really I would gut the property, put new electric in, put new plumbing in, and you would really have to go that deep, and then you'd have to redo the outside probably too to make it Class B. But a lot of that is location and age of property.
And amenities.
Yeah, add a swimming pool or a gym and stuff like that. So I could push it to Class B, but there's no point in doing that. The inside, doing the interior hallways and the interior doors, and then just the constant kind of new flooring and new paint and new appliances that have been put in, have probably moved it to, that would probably move it to a C+, but that's about as high as I think it would ever get given location, right? It's sitting right kind of in the north side of UNC. It's within walking distance, but it's not like a stellar, perfect neighborhood.
It's not in downtown Greeley or downtown Fort Collins where you're trying to convert from status to.
Yeah, and it's just not new enough. Yeah. Anybody else have any other questions? Yeah.
How many multifamily properties do you have?
More than that one. I don't disclose exactly what I own, so.
So one of the things about our culture here is, when I was growing up, my parents taught me, don't ask people how much money you make. It's kind of like a rude question. And so when you ask somebody how many properties you own here, it's almost the equivalent. I mean, because you go, how many properties you own, and do you finance them all? And the next thing you know, it's like you're able to do the math. And that's sort of like a question we don't encourage people to ask here.
Yeah, I think the other side of it is, so if I say 10 multifamily properties, or I say 3, or I say 100, what?
The guy who said that you
Oh,
were
yeah.
not
Oh, yeah.
qualified.
Yeah, well, that's a funny story. But like, if I say that, what do you garner from that? Like, to me, I think you can garner what my experience level is from the presentation, probably, right? And if not, talk to me after class, and I'm happy to talk one-on-one with you and tell you more, right? But especially on mic, right? There are very few people who know. There's maybe 2 people in this room that know, right? And that's because they're 2 really close friends. So, yeah. The funny story that James is going to tell was one night at NCraig, it came up. I don't know what this was, but it was like, he asked, how many deals have you done? And I was like, I don't know, this is like a couple years in, and I was like, I counted it up. And it was one of the few times I responded to this question, and I was like, I think it's 27, and that was buy and sell side. And he goes, man, you need 28 to be an expert.
Yeah, or it was something like that. It was like, you need to have done 30 deals to be an expert. And
no, it was one off.
Yeah, I know it was like one off. It was some ridiculous
like literally
thing.
28. It wasn't a round number. It was like 28 in order to be an expert. And I was like, how did you determine
That's
this?
so arbitrary. And I will tell you, so I've actually I've dug into the data in our local public record data systems about how many people own properties. The list of people in town that own more than 10 properties is really small, just so you know. It is not, if you think that there's a whole bunch of people in town that own 20 plus units, you're mistaken. Because I've actually dug through public record and matched it by both name and address that stuff gets mailed to, in case you think people are buying stuff in LLCs and having it mailed there. So
Yeah. And it's
you'd be
hard
really
because a lot of
surprised.
people are like, hey, I'm going to buy something, and they nomad 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then life gets busy.
Yeah.
And then they're like,
And
oh,
that may be enough.
I'll buy- yeah.
Mary came in and she was saying, like 5 deals, and I've completely funded my retirement.
Yeah.
I don't need to do anymore. And it's really a function of your goals, not what everyone else's goals are.
Yeah. And I think also it's not like how many properties you own or how many deals you've done may or may not be representative of what you actually know and how well you did it, right? There are, for example, the person that sold this property and the people that sold the other 8-plex that I talked about the buying at the beginning, like they could have said, I own, 50 units, but clearly they don't know what they're doing well enough to actually take advantage, right? And they could have made a ton more money. So there's a quote in one of the presentations which is like, when you're being a landlord, right? Don't ask a landlord for advice. Ask a smart, wealthy landlord for advice, right? Ask somebody who's actually doing it and doing it well, so that they're successful, so that you follow that.
Yeah, and also it can be really deceptive when you ask somebody how many properties you own. I mean, I could think of real examples. Brian and I have this discussion sometimes about how many units do you own and stuff like that, and we start measuring up against each other, and it's really deceptive because in one way it's higher, but the other way it's much, much better for the other direction. So just be aware that someone telling you something in a group or one-on-one, you got to really know the whole story, and a lot of times you do not know the whole story. People tend to,
Yeah, and people will say, right? I mean, you may own a 1% share in a 1,000-unit complex, and you may ask them, hey, how many do you own? And they're like 1,050, and you're like, whoa! And really, they make $50 a month from that investment.
Yeah, and you own in 2 single-family homes by yourself is a better investment. Yeah. So be super careful about that too.
Any other questions?
That's right. I own Netflix and Google. I own 1 share of each. Yeah, I'm an owner. Yeah, exactly. Well,
any other questions? If not, stick around for the class after class. Feel free to come ask us questions.
yeah, thank you all for coming. See you soon.